Greetings and salutations. Welcome to H. Potter. We are thrilled to present today's story. What if Harry's scar was not a curse but an ancient rune that made him the true master of death? If these stories bring joy to your day, please consider liking and subscribing. Every bit of support helps us continue this passion project. Now, prepare yourself for an amazing tale. Chapter 1, The Awakening Rune. Harry's fingers twitched toward his wand before his eyes even opened. Something had changed in the safe house. The air felt different, heavier, charged with a presence that hadn't been there when he'd fallen asleep. "I know you're there," he said into the darkness, voice steady despite having been asleep moments before. No response came, but Harry felt it, someone or something watching from the corner of the room. He'd developed this sense over 5 years as an aura, but lately, it had sharpened beyond explanation. He could practically taste the intrusion in the air. Harry sat up slowly, wand already in hand. "Lumos," he whispered, and the tip ignited, illuminating an empty corner. But it wasn't empty. Not really. For just a heartbeat, Harry saw a figure, translucent and wavering like heat rising from pavement, before it vanished completely. "Shit," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. The third time this week. His scar hadn't hurt since Voldemort's death, but lately it tingled with an odd, almost electric sensation. The healers found nothing wrong. The Department of Mysteries experts had no answers. Even Hermione's research turned up nothing conclusive. Harry swung his legs off the bed and checked his watch, 4:37 a.m. No point trying to sleep now. In 3 hours, he'd be leading a raid on a suspected dark artifacts smuggling ring operating out of an abandoned apothecary in Nocturne Alley. The flat he'd been given as a safe house was small but functional. Harry moved to the kitchenette and tapped his wand against the kettle, which immediately began to boil. As he prepared tea, he caught his reflection in the window, his lightning scar more prominent than it had been in years, almost glowing faintly in the dim light. Harry touched it gingerly. No pain, just that strange humming sensation, like magic moving beneath his skin. His communication mirror buzzed on the counter. Ron's face appeared, looking far too alert for this hour. "You up?" Ron asked unnecessarily. "Something woke me," Harry replied, not mentioning the apparition. Ron already worried enough. "Same here. Got a message from Lewis. Our informant says they're moving the artifacts now." Timelines accelerated. Harry downed his tea in one gulp. "Meet you at the rendezvous point in 15. By the time Harry apparat to the designated alley 2 blocks from Nocturne, the sky had barely lightened to a deep blue. Ron waited with Aurors Finch and Dawlish, all dressed in civilian robes designed to blend in with early morning market workers. "Brief me," Harry said, falling easily into mission mode. 6 suspects inside, Ron said, showing Harry a rough floor plan. "Basement access here and here. They've got anti-apparition wards up, but according to our informant, they're expecting a buyer at sunrise." Hermione checked the ward signatures. "They're using a modified Fidelius variant that has a weakness at the rear entrance." Harry nodded, studying the layout. "Dawlish, you and Finch take the front when I give the signal. Ron and I will breach from the back. Standard containment protocol, no one gets out, nothing gets destroyed." The team moved silently through the slowly awakening streets. As they neared the target building, Harry felt that strange tingling in his scar intensify. "You all right?" Ron whispered, noticing Harry touching his forehead. "Fine. Just focused." Harry positioned himself at the back entrance, a weathered door with peeling green paint. He could feel the magic humming in the walls. The wards were strong but had a distinctive pattern that felt almost visible to him now. Harry closed his eyes, wand raised, and something clicked into place. He could see the magic, really see it, threads of energy woven into a complex lattice. Without fully understanding how, Harry knew exactly where to touch his wand to unravel it. "Resero textura," he whispered, using a spell he didn't consciously remember learning. The ward structure shimmered and collapsed silently, leaving the entrance unprotected. Ron stared at him. What was that? I've never seen that counterward before. Harry blinked, equally confused. It just came to me. No time to analyze it now. Harry sent his Patronus to alert Dawlish, then counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1, they burst through the door, wands at the ready. Inside, shadowy figures scrambled at their sudden appearance. A tall wizard near a large crate reacted first, sending a jet of purple flame toward them. Protego. Harry's shield charm materialized instantly, but instead of the usual transparent barrier, a strange silvery sheen covered it, absorbing the curse completely. Ministry Aurors. Ron shouted. Lower your wands. Chaos erupted. Spells flew in all directions as the smugglers scattered. Harry moved with practiced efficiency, stunning 2 wizards in quick succession before diving behind a stack of crates as a blasting curse shattered the wall behind where he'd stood. From the front of the shop came the sounds of Dawlish and Finch engaging more opponents. Harry spotted their primary target, Cassius Blackwood, former Ministry employee turned artifact smuggler, attempting to seal a small chest. Ron, cover me. Harry called, then moved with surprising speed across the room. A smuggler appeared from behind a shelf, wand aimed directly at Harry's chest. Avada, time seemed to slow. Harry felt his scar pulse with energy, and suddenly he knew with complete certainty, that the killing curse would miss him by inches. He didn't dodge but continued charging forward, firing a stunning spell that caught the shocked wizard mid-incantation. Harry, what the hell? Ron shouted, having witnessed Harry's apparent suicidal charge. He nearly knew it would miss, Harry called back, not understanding himself how he'd been so certain. Blackwood abandoned the chest and fired a barrage of curses that forced Harry to duck behind a counter. The air filled with shattered glass and splinters. You don't know what you're interfering with, Potter. Blackwood snarled. Some artifacts aren't meant for Ministry control. Harry felt the strange energy pulsing from his scar again. As if guided by instinct, he pointed his wand at the overhead chandelier and severed its chain without looking. The massive fixture crashed down exactly where Blackwood lunged a split second later, pinning him to the floor. Mate, that was either the luckiest shot I've ever seen or... Ron trailed off as he secured Blackwood with magical restraints. Harry didn't respond, his attention caught by the chest Blackwood had been attempting to seal. It called to him somehow. Before he could consider why, he found himself kneeling beside it. Don't touch that. Blackwood spat, struggling against his bonds. Not meant for the living, Harry's hand moved toward the latch, and as his fingers made contact, his scar exploded with sensation, not pain, but a rush of energy that made his vision swim. The chest opened at his touch without resistance, revealing an ancient stone tablet covered in runes. One rune at the center blazed momentarily with golden light, a symbol identical to Harry's scar. Soilo, Harry whispered, though he had no idea how he knew the name. Harry, step back from that, Ron warned, having secured the other smugglers. We need a cursebreaker to check it before, but Harry couldn't look away. The rune pulsed in sync with his scar, and images flashed through his mind, a veil fluttering though there was no wind, shadowy figures reaching out, whispers in languages he shouldn't understand but somehow did. All units secure, came Dawlish's voice as he entered from the front. Areas contained and, Potter, don't touch that. Too late. Harry's fingers traced the rune on the tablet, and a surge of power coursed through him. The stone crumbled to dust beneath his touch, the magic contained within it seeming to flow directly into Harry's scar. Harry gasped and fell backward, the room spinning around him. For a moment, just a moment, he saw them all. Not just his fellow Aurors and the captured smugglers, but shadowy figures standing behind each person, reflections or echoes of their eventual death. Behind Ron stood a much older version of his friend, peaceful and surrounded by family. Behind Dawlish, a figure slumped in what looked like a hospital bed. Behind Blackwood, nothing but darkness and screaming. Then, as quickly as it came, the vision vanished. Harry found himself on the floor, Ron kneeling beside him in concern. Harry! Harry, can you hear me? Harry blinked, the world returning to normal. I'm fine, he said, though he felt fundamentally changed in ways he couldn't articulate. What happened? Ron helped him to his feet. You touched that tablet and then just collapsed. Harry glanced at where the tablet had been, nothing remained but dust. I saw, he stopped himself. How could he explain seeing death's shadows without sounding completely mental? I don't know. Something magical. We should get these artifacts secured. Blackwood laughed from where he lay restrained. It's begun, hasn't it, Potter? The awakening. You've always been more than the boy who lived. Harry turned to him sharply. What do you know about this? Blackwood's eyes darted to Harry's scar. That mark was never a curse. Ask yourself, what kind of curse leaves a perfect rune? The Dark Lord marked you, but not in the way anyone understood. His gaze turned fearful. They'll be coming for you now. They'll feel it too. Who? Harry demanded. Who's coming? But Dawlish interrupted, save the interrogation for the ministry, Potter. Let's secure the scene and transport these suspects. The next few hours passed in a blur of procedure, evidence collection, suspect processing, preliminary reports. Through it all, Harry felt disconnected, as if operating on autopilot while his mind tried to process what had happened. His scar continued to tingle, and occasionally, when he looked at certain people, he caught glimpses of those shadow figures again, echoes of deaths yet to come. By mid-afternoon, Harry sat in his cubicle at Auror headquarters, staring at his incomplete report. The words swam before his eyes, refusing to make sense. You look terrible, Hermione said, appearing at his cubicle entrance with 2 cups of coffee. She slid one toward him and took the visitor's chair. Thanks, Harry replied, genuinely grateful for both the coffee and her presence. Ron told me what happened, she continued, keeping her voice low. About the tablet and your reaction. Harry glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Something's happening to me, Hermione. Since I touched that tablet, no, even before that. 4 weeks now. Hermione leaned forward. Tell me everything. Harry described the visions, the tingling in his scar, the strange way he'd known exactly how to counter the wards and how he'd known the killing curse would miss him. And when I touched the tablet, I saw this symbol. Harry drew the rune on a scrap of parchment. It's the same shape as my scar. Blackwood called it an awakening. Hermione studied the symbol, her expression growing increasingly troubled. Harry, this is Soilo, the ancient Norse rune of power, victory, and guidance. It represents the sun's energy and life force. She hesitated. It's also associated with journeys between worlds in some older texts. Journeys between worlds? Like, life and death? Possibly. Hermione bit her lip. Harry, what if your scar was never just the mark left by a failed killing curse? What if it's actually this rune, somehow imprinted on you? Harry touched his forehead reflexively. But what would that mean? Why would, a paper airplane memo zoomed into the cubicle, interrupting their conversation. Harry unfolded it and frowned. Department of Mysteries wants to see me immediately. Unspeakable Valeria Blackwood. Harry looked up sharply. Blackwood, like Cassius Blackwood, the smuggler we just arrested? Could be coincidence, Hermione said, not sounding convinced. Nothing's coincidence anymore. Harry stood, downing the last of his coffee. Coming with me? Hermione hesitated. I shouldn't. Unspeakable business is classified, and technically I'm still magical law enforcement, not Dom. Since when has shouldn't stopped you? Harry managed a small smile. Hermione returned it reluctantly. Fair point. The Department of Mysteries remained as unsettling as Harry remembered from that fateful night in his 5th year. The rotating room with identical doors disoriented visitors by design, but Harry felt an odd certainty about which door to choose. "Third door on the left," he said confidently. Hermione raised an eyebrow. "How do you know?" "I don't," Harry admitted. "I just feel it." The door Harry selected opened into a long corridor lined with glass cases containing various artifacts. At the far end stood a woman in the grey robes of an unspeakable, her back to them as she studied something on a pedestal. "Auror Potter," she said without turning. "And Miss Granger as well. I expected you might bring her." The woman turned, revealing a sharp-featured face with piercing blue eyes and silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a tight bun. Despite her severe appearance, she couldn't have been more than 10 years older than Harry. "Unspeakable Blackwood?" Harry asked cautiously. "Valeria Blackwood, yes." She gestured for them to approach. "I presume you're wondering about my relation to the man you arrested this morning. Cassius is my cousin, a fact that has caused me no small amount of professional embarrassment over the years." Harry studied her carefully. "You requested this meeting immediately after I encountered a tablet with a specific rune. That seems like more than coincidence. Direct. Good." Valeria nodded approvingly. "The department has been monitoring your situation for some time, Auror Potter. This morning's events merely accelerated our timeline." "Monitoring what situation exactly?" Hermione asked sharply. Valeria's eyes flicked to Harry's scar. "The awakening of the Soilo rune. May I?" She raised her hand toward Harry's forehead. Harry hesitated, then nodded. Her fingers were cool against his skin as she traced the lightning bolt shape. "Fascinating," she murmured. "The resonance is much stronger now." The tablet served as a catalyst. Harry stepped back from her touch. "Explain." "Now." Valeria gestured to the pedestal she'd been examining. On it sat an ancient book, open to a page showing the same rune that matched Harry's scar. "The Soilo rune is one of the oldest magical symbols known to wizardkind," she explained. "It represents power, guidance, and most importantly, the ability to move between realms, specifically, the realm of the living and the realm of the dead." "The Master of Death," Hermione whispered. Valeria's eyes sharpened. "You're well informed, Miss Granger." "Yes, in ancient runic lore, the bearer of Soilo was considered the bridge between worlds. The Master of Death was not someone who conquered death, but someone who could walk between life and death, an ambassador of sorts." Harry's mind raced back to that moment in the forest during the Battle of Hogwarts, his conversation with Dumbledore in that strange, white King's Cross. Had that been real? A journey between realms? "But my scar came from Voldemort's killing curse," Harry argued. "It wasn't some ancient marking." "Perhaps," Valeria said thoughtfully, "or perhaps the killing curse merely activated something that was always there. Consider this, Auror Potter, of all the possible marks a rebounding killing curse could leave, why would it form a perfect runic symbol of power and journeying between worlds?" The implications made Harry's head spin. "Are you suggesting I was marked as this Master of Death before Voldemort ever attacked me?" "I'm suggesting," Valeria said carefully, "that magic far older than any of us recognized something in you, and the events of that night activated it. Your subsequent gathering of the Deathly Hallows was not coincidence but fulfillment." Hermione looked skeptical. "That's an enormous leap of logic." "Perhaps." Valeria closed the ancient book. "But how else do you explain Auror Potter's recent experiences? The visions of the dead? The premonitions? The innate understanding of magic he's never studied?" Harry and Hermione exchanged surprised looks. "How do you know about those?" Harry demanded. Valeria smiled thinly. "As I said, we've been monitoring. The Department of Mysteries has instruments that detect significant magical anomalies. Your scar has been registering as increasingly active for months." "That's invasive and probably illegal," Hermione said coldly. "Perhaps, but necessary." Valeria's expression turned grave. Because you're not the only one who's noticed these changes, Auror Potter. There are others who have felt the awakening of a true master of death. Not all of them welcome it. Blackwood mentioned something about people coming for me, Harry recalled. Valeria nodded. The Mortis Venatori. Death Hunters. An ancient cult dedicated to maintaining the natural order between life and death. They believe a true master of death threatens that balance. And they want to kill me, Harry concluded flatly. They want to extinguish the Soilo rune, Valeria corrected. Which would indeed require your death. Harry felt a headache building behind his eyes. 5 years of relative peace after defeating Voldemort, only to discover he had a target on his back again, for something he never asked for. Again. So what now? He asked wearily. Now, Valeria said, we help you understand what you're becoming before they find you. The tablet you touched this morning was merely the beginning, there are other artifacts that can help you control these emerging abilities. And I'm just supposed to trust you? Harry asked skeptically. The cousin of a dark artifact smuggler? My familial connections give me access to information others lack, Valeria countered smoothly. But trust must be earned. For now, I suggest you take this. She handed Harry a small silver amulet engraved with protective runes. It will help stabilize the energy fluctuations you're experiencing and make you harder for the Venatori to track. Harry accepted the amulet cautiously. When his fingers closed around it, he felt an immediate calming effect on his scars tingling. We should research this independently, Hermione whispered to Harry. Before committing to anything. Harry nodded slightly, then addressed Valeria. I'll consider what you've said. In the meantime, I expect full disclosure about anything else you know regarding my condition. Of course. Valeria handed him a small, blank card. When you're ready to learn more, touch your wand to this card and say, Soilo awakens. It will guide you to me. Her gaze intensified. But don't wait too long, Auror Potter. The Venatori are nothing if not thorough. They've likely already sensed the surge from this morning's activation. As if on cue, an alarm began to sound somewhere in the department. Valeria's head snapped toward the door. We have an intruder, she said tensely. Someone has breached the department's outer defenses. Her eyes locked with Harry's. They're coming sooner than I expected. Harry's Auror training kicked in immediately. Secure all exits, he told Hermione, who already had her wand out. I'll contact backup. But before Harry could send a Patronus message, the lights throughout the corridor flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Only the glass cases housing various artifacts provided any illumination, casting eerie blue and green glows across their faces. Lumos, Harry and Hermione cast simultaneously. The wand light revealed Valeria drawing complex defensive runes in the air with her wand, creating a shimmering barrier across the corridor's entrance. That won't hold them for long, she muttered. The Venatori have ways of unraveling standard protections. Harry felt it then, a cold presence approaching, similar to Dementors but somehow more substantial, more purposeful. His scar tingled with increasing intensity. They're close, he said, instinctively moving to position himself between the approaching threat and Hermione. How many? Hermione asked, already casting additional protective enchantments. Harry closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the strange new sense. 3. Moving deliberately. They know exactly where I am. Valeria shot him a surprised look. Your abilities are developing faster than anticipated. The temperature in the corridor dropped sharply. Frost began forming on the glass cases. Department of Mysteries is supposed to be one of the most secure locations in the wizarding world, Hermione said, her breath visible in the increasingly cold air. How are they breaching it so easily? Because they're not entirely of this world, Valeria replied grimly. The Venatori exist partially in the realm of death. It gives them certain advantages when it comes to magical barriers. The defensive rune barrier at the corridor's entrance suddenly sizzled and collapsed. 3 tall figures glided into view, wearing hooded cloaks of deepest black that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. Their faces remained hidden in shadow, but Harry could feel their focus fixed entirely on him, specifically, on his scar. "The marked one," a voice hissed, seeming to echo from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "The Boundary Walker awakens. This cannot be permitted." Harry raised his wand, but found himself hesitating. Standard combat spells felt somehow insufficient against these entities. "Department of Magical Law Enforcement," he called out nonetheless. "Stand down immediately." A cold, hollow laugh emanated from the central figure. "Your mortal authority means nothing. The balance must be preserved." The 3 figures raised their hands in unison, and waves of grey energy pulsed toward them. Harry instinctively cast a shield charm, but the energy passed through it like it wasn't there. "Protego Mortalis!" Valeria shouted, creating a different kind of barrier that shimmered with silver light. The grey energy dissipated against it. "Conventional shields don't work," she explained rapidly. "They exist partially outside our realm. You need to." The tallest Venator made a slashing motion, and Valeria's shield shattered. The force of it threw her backward against a display case, which cracked under the impact. Harry felt a sudden surge of energy from his scar, and acting purely on instinct, he pointed his wand at the approaching figures and commanded, "Revelio Vitae." Golden light erupted from his wand, enveloping the 3 Venatori. They shrieked, a horrible, otherworldly sound, as the light seemed to solidify their forms, making them more substantial, more present in the physical world. "They're anchored temporarily." Harry shouted to Hermione. "Standard spells should work now." Hermione didn't hesitate. "Incarcerus." Magical ropes shot toward the nearest Venator, binding it tightly now that it couldn't phase through physical restraints. Harry targeted another with a stunning spell, which struck with visible effect, sending the figure crashing into the wall. The 3rd Venator, however, recovered quickly from the anchoring spell and lunged toward Harry with unnatural speed. Cold fingers gripped Harry's throat, and he felt his life force beginning to drain away. The Venator's hood fell back slightly, revealing not a face but a swirling void where features should be. "You cannot escape what you are, Boundary Walker," it whispered directly into Harry's mind. "Death has marked you. Death will claim you." Harry's vision began to darken at the edges. Through fading consciousness, he saw Hermione attempting to pull the creature off him without success, her spells seemingly passing through it now. The pressure on his throat increased, and with his remaining strength, Harry reached up and pressed his palm directly against where the Venator's face should be. His scar erupted with burning energy that coursed down his arm. "I don't fear death," Harry gasped, somehow knowing these words held power. "I've walked its path and returned." Golden light blazed from his palm, and the Venator released him with another unearthly shriek. Harry collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath, as the creature backed away. "This is not ended," the Venator hissed, rejoining its companions who had freed themselves from their temporary restraints. "We are merely the harbingers. The Grandmaster comes." The 3 figures seemed to dissolve into shadow, slipping away through cracks in the walls and floor until they vanished completely. Silence fell over the corridor. The lights flickered back to life, and the temperature gradually returned to normal. Harry helped Valeria to her feet while Hermione sealed the corridor's entrance with additional protective spells. "What the hell were those things?" Harry demanded. "The foot soldiers of the Venatori," Valeria explained, wincing as she touched a cut on her forehead. "Not their most powerful members, thankfully, or we wouldn't have survived this encounter." "You said they exist partially in the realm of death," Hermione said, rejoining them. "How is that possible?" "Ancient sacrificial magic," Valeria replied grimly. "They surrender portions of their life force to gain access to death's power. It makes them formidable opponents. They can phase through solid matter, resist most conventional spells, and sense the boundary between worlds." Harry rubbed his throat where bruises were already forming. "And they can be stopped how, exactly?" "As you instinctively discovered, they can be temporarily anchored to our realm, making them vulnerable to physical attack, Valeria said. But permanently defeating them requires severing their connection to the death realm. Which requires what? Special weapons? Specific spells? Valeria's gaze returned to Harry's scar. It requires the power of someone who can walk both realms, a true master of death. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lingering cold. So I'm the only one who can stop them, but I don't know how to use these supposed abilities. Hence why you need my help. Valeria straightened her robes. What you did just now, the anchoring spell, the light from your hand, those were instinctive manifestations of your awakening power. With proper training, you could command these abilities consciously. Alarms continued to sound throughout the department. In the distance, they could hear shouting as Ministry security responded to the breach. We need to move, Valeria said urgently. The Ministry will lock down this entire level, and we don't have time for explanations. I'm not going anywhere until I get some answers, Harry insisted. Harry, Hermione interjected, I think we should listen to her, at least about leaving. We can continue this conversation somewhere secure. Harry hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. Where? Valeria reached into her robes and withdrew a small silver key. This will take us to a safe location, one the department maintains off official records. A port key, Harry observed. Of a sort. Valeria held it out. It's keyed to respond only to those I designate. No one can follow unless I allow it. Harry and Hermione exchanged looks, having a silent conversation born from years of friendship and shared danger. Finally, Hermione gave a slight nod. Let's go, Harry said, reaching for the key alongside Hermione. The moment all three touched it, Harry felt the familiar hook behind his navel, but stronger, more disorienting than any port key he'd experienced before. The world dissolved into swirling color and rushing sound. When reality reassembled itself, they stood in a circular stone chamber lined with bookshelves and illuminated by floating globes of blue-white light. Ancient artifacts and peculiar instruments filled glass cabinets around the perimeter, and in the center stood a large table carved with intricate runic patterns. Welcome, Valeria said, pocketing the key, to the Arcana Mortis, the Archive of Death. One of the department's most closely guarded resources. Harry scanned the room, aura instincts automatically cataloging exits, one heavy wooden door, potential weapons, several ceremonial daggers in a display case, and defensive positions, limited, due to the circular layout. I assume this place is warded, he asked. Extensively, Valeria confirmed. It exists in a pocket dimension adjacent to conventional space, similar to a room of requirement, but far more stable and secure. Hermione had already gravitated toward the nearest bookshelf, examining titles written in languages Harry didn't recognize. These texts, some of these are thought to be lost to history. The department preserves knowledge others would destroy, Valeria said. Particularly regarding the boundaries between life and death. Harry approached the central table, drawn to the runic inscriptions. Among the complex patterns, the Soilo rune appeared repeatedly, sometimes alone, sometimes connected to other symbols in intricate configurations. How long has the department known about me? Harry asked quietly. About what my scar really is. Valeria joined him at the table. Suspicions began after your encounter with Voldemort in the forest. Your survival despite receiving another killing curse suggested something beyond ordinary magical protection. When you subsequently united the Hallows, certain monitoring instruments in the department registered unprecedented readings. But you didn't approach me then. No. There was debate about whether to contact you at all. Some unspeakables believed interference might prevent the natural progression of your abilities. Others feared what those abilities might become. And which camp were you in? Hermione asked, returning from the bookshelves with an ancient-looking volume. Valeria smiled thinly. I believed knowledge was preferable to ignorance. But I was overruled, until recently, when your powers began manifesting spontaneously. Harry traced the Soilo rune on the table with his finger. A slight tingle of recognition passed through his scar. So what exactly am I becoming? What does being the Master of Death actually mean? That's the question, isn't it? Valeria moved to a cabinet and retrieved a silver pensive engraved with symbols similar to those on the central table. Perhaps it's easier if I show you. She placed the pensive on the table and withdrew a crystal vial from her robes. The memory within swirled with unusual colors, not the standard silver blue but a mixture of gold and deep purple. This is a preserved memory from Ignotus Peveril himself, the original owner of the invisibility cloak and your distant ancestor. Harry's eyebrows rose in surprise. How is that possible? Memory preservation spells weren't developed until centuries after the Peveril brothers lived. Conventional preservation spells, no, Valeria agreed. But the Peverils developed many magical techniques lost to modern wizardry. This memory was stored in a crystal matrix and passed down through certain branches of the department for generations. She unstoppered the vial and poured the contents into the pensieve. The swirling colors expanded, filling the basin. Shall we? She invited, gesturing toward the memory. Harry hesitated only briefly before nodding. Together? Hermione stepped to his side. Together. The three of them leaned forward simultaneously, and the world tilted as they fell into Ignotus Peveril's memory. They landed in a dimly lit stone chamber not unlike the Arcanum they'd just left, though cruder in construction. A man sat alone at a workbench, his face illuminated by a single candle as he meticulously inscribed runes onto what Harry recognized as the Resurrection Stone. Ignotus Peveril looked younger than Harry had imagined, perhaps in his late 30s, with a scholarly demeanor that reminded him somewhat of Remus Lupin. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and deep lines etched his forehead as he concentrated on his work. The last of the three, Ignotus murmured to himself. With this, the triangle closes. The chamber door opened, and another man entered, older, with a bearing of authority that marked him as someone accustomed to command. It's done then? The newcomer asked. Ignotus nodded without looking up. The stone is complete, Armand. As is the wand my brother crafted and the cloak I finished last winter. 3 artifacts to bridge the worlds, Armand said, approaching the workbench. Are you certain of this path, Ignotus? The boundary between life and death was established for a reason. I don't seek to break the boundary, Ignotus replied, finally setting down his tools. Only to understand it. To navigate it when necessary. He touched a medallion hanging around his neck, one bearing the Soilo rune. The mark came to me for a purpose. I merely fulfill what was ordained. Armand's expression grew troubled. The Venatori will sense what you've created. They'll come for you, for all who bear the mark in generations to come. Let them come. Ignotus stood, revealing a wand holstered at his belt and the shimmer of the invisibility cloak draped across a nearby chair. The Hallows will protect their master until the true heir emerges. And how will you know this heir? Ignotus smiled slightly. The mark will find them, as it found me. Death's ambassador will walk among the living when the need is greatest. The memory shifted, blurring and reforming. Now they stood in a forest clearing under a full moon. Ignotus, noticeably older, faced a semicircle of hooded figures similar to the Venatori they'd encountered in the Department of Mysteries. You cannot escape us forever, Boundary Walker, one figure intoned. The natural order must be preserved. Ignotus stood calmly, the 3 Hallows arrayed before him on a flat stone. I have no intention of escaping, Grandmaster. My work is complete. The path is prepared for one who will come after. The mark cannot be allowed to continue, the Grandmaster stated flatly. Surrender it, and your line may live. The mark is not mine to surrender, Ignotus replied. It belongs to death itself, and death has chosen its ambassador. The Grandmaster raised a gnarled hand. Then you leave us no choice. The Venatori moved as one, sending waves of that same grey energy Harry had witnessed in the department corridor. But instead of defending himself, Ignotus simply closed his eyes and touched the Soilo rune medallion at his throat. "I return willingly to death's embrace," he said quietly. "But what I have built will endure." Golden light erupted from the medallion, enveloping Ignotus completely. When it faded, he was gone, not fallen, but simply absent, as though he had stepped through an invisible doorway. The halos remained on the stone, glowing faintly. The Grand Master approached cautiously. "He has passed beyond our reach," he announced to the others. "But his creations remain. Scatter them to the corners of the world. Let none unite them until we have extinguished every trace of the mark." The memory dissolved, and Harry felt himself being pulled back to the present. They emerged from the pensive, blinking as their eyes readjusted to the Arcanum's lighting. "Ignotus didn't die naturally," Harry said, processing what he'd witnessed. "He chose to cross over." "Yes," Valeria confirmed. "According to our records, Ignotus Peveril mastered the ability to transition between realms at will, the ultimate expression of being Death's ambassador. But the story says he gave the cloak to his son and greeted Death as an old friend," Hermione pointed out. "Stories change in the telling," Valeria replied. "The truth is, Ignotus realized the Venatori would never stop hunting him while he lived. By crossing over voluntarily, he protected his family and ensured the Hallows would be separated until the time was right." Harry paced around the table, mind racing. "So the Hallows weren't created by Death, Ignotus and his brothers made them." "The Peverils crafted the physical objects," Valeria clarified, "but they channeled power far beyond ordinary magic. Ignotus bore the mark, the Soilo rune, just as you do. It gave him insight into Death's realm that no ordinary wizard could possess. And now I have the same mark," Harry said grimly. "Because Voldemort's killing curse activated it somehow." "Precisely." Valeria retrieved the memory from the pensive. "The mark chooses its bearer based on criteria we don't fully understand. It may lie dormant for generations before finding a suitable host." "But Harry doesn't have the Hallows anymore," Hermione pointed out. "The stone is lost in the Forbidden Forest, the wand was returned to Dumbledore's tomb, and only the cloak remains in Harry's possession." "True mastery doesn't require physical possession," Valeria said. "Harry united them once, that connection remains on a deeper magical level. And more importantly, his encounter with Voldemort's killing curse in the forest, followed by his willing return to the world of the living, marked a transition similar to what the true Master of Death can achieve." Harry stopped pacing, a realization dawning. "The King's Cross vision, talking to Dumbledore after Voldemort hit me with the killing curse. That wasn't just in my head, was it? I was actually, between worlds." Valeria nodded slowly. "We believe so, yes. You achieved naturally what Ignotus spent decades learning to control, the ability to walk the boundary between life and death." "But I didn't choose to go there," Harry argued. "And I certainly don't know how to do it again. Hence the awakening phase you're experiencing now," Valeria explained. "Your abilities are emerging incrementally. The tablet you encountered this morning contained runic activators specifically designed to accelerate this process." "Wait," Hermione interjected, eyes narrowing. "How did that tablet end up with the smugglers in the first place? In a raid that Harry's team specifically conducted?" Valeria's expression remained carefully neutral. "The department has ways of directing certain artifacts to where they need to be." Harry's jaw tightened. "You used me. Set me up to find that tablet." "I facilitated an awakening that was already in progress," Valeria countered smoothly. "The tablet would have found you eventually, I merely expedited the process before the Venatori could interfere." "And your cousin Cassius? Was he part of this plan too?" A flicker of emotion, genuine regret, perhaps, crossed Valeria's face. "Cassius made his choices long ago. His involvement with dark artifacts is real, as are his crimes. But yes, I ensured the information about his operation reached Auror intelligence." Hermione looked outraged. You manipulated a Department of Magical Law Enforcement operation for your own agenda. That's necessary, Valeria interrupted firmly. The Venatori have been moving pieces into position for months, Harry. They sensed your awakening beginning and have agents throughout the ministry. I couldn't risk approaching you directly until you were ready. Harry felt his temper rising, but forced himself to think logically. These visions I've been having, seeing how people will die. Is that part of being, whatever I am? Valeria nodded. Death's ambassador perceives the connection between individuals and their eventual fate. What you're seeing are what we call death shadows, echoes of future events that exist in potential. Can I change what I see? Harry asked, thinking of the dark, screaming void he'd glimpsed behind Blackwood. Sometimes, Valeria said carefully. Death has patterns, but not absolute certainty. A master of death doesn't control these outcomes but can sometimes influence the journey. Harry fell silent, absorbing this information. After a lifetime of having his fate determined by prophecy and the actions of others, the idea that he might now have some agency in matters of life and death was both empowering and terrifying. What happens now? He finally asked. The Venatori know I'm awakening. They'll keep coming. Now, Valeria said, we prepare you to face them. There are techniques to control your emerging abilities, artifacts that can help you understand your connection to Death's realm. And most importantly, we need to find the Mortis Clavis, the Death Key. Another artifact? Hermione asked skeptically. The most important one, Valeria confirmed. According to our records, Ignotus created it as a fail-safe, a means for the true Master of Death to fully control the boundary between worlds. Without it, your abilities will remain unstable, dangerous to yourself and others. And where is this key? Harry asked. That's the problem. It was hidden centuries ago, its location protected by a series of trials only the true master could navigate. Valeria moved to another cabinet and withdrew a small wooden box. However, we have this. She opened the box to reveal what appeared to be a compass, though instead of cardinal directions, its face displayed unfamiliar symbols with the Soilo rune at its center. The Wayfinder, Valeria explained. It responds to the energy of your mark and will guide you toward objects connected to your awakening, including, theoretically, the Mortis Clavis. Harry approached cautiously, studying the unusual device. When his hand hovered near it, the needle quivered and oriented itself toward him, specifically, toward his scar. It recognizes you, Valeria observed with satisfaction. Harry withdrew his hand, suddenly overwhelmed by everything he'd learned. His entire understanding of his past, of the scar he'd borne since infancy, had been appended in a single day. Now he faced a new threat, new abilities he barely understood, and apparently a mystical quest for a hidden key. I need time to think, he said quietly. And I need to talk to my friends. Valeria looked like she wanted to argue but nodded reluctantly. Of course. But please be cautious. The Venatori will be watching for you now, and they have ways of tracking the mark's energy when it's active. She retrieved the silver amulet she'd given Harry earlier. This will help shield your presence temporarily. Wear it when you sleep, that's when the boundary between worlds thins, and when you're most vulnerable to detection. Harry accepted the amulet, feeling the same calming effect on his scar as before. How do we contact you? The card I gave you earlier, Valeria reminded him. It will bring you back here when you're ready. She hesitated, then added, I know this is overwhelming, Harry. But you're not alone in this journey. The department has resources, I have resources too, Harry interrupted, glancing at Hermione. People I actually trust. Valeria didn't seem offended. Of course. Trust is earned, not given. I only ask that you move quickly, the Venatori will not wait long before their next attempt. How do we get back? Hermione asked. Since this place exists in a pocket dimension, was it? The key works both ways, Valeria said, retrieving the silver key she'd used earlier. It will return you to the location of your choosing. Harry named the address of his flat, and Valeria configured the key accordingly. Before activating it, Harry had one more question. Why me? He asked simply. Of all the wizards who could have borne this mark, why did it choose me? Valeria's expression softened slightly. The department has theories, but no certainties. Perhaps because you faced death without fear as an infant. Perhaps because your mother's sacrifice created a unique magical resonance. Or perhaps because, at your core, you understand something most never grasp, that death is not to be conquered or feared, but accepted as part of a greater journey. She offered the key, and Harry took it, Hermione placing her hand alongside his. We'll be in touch soon, Harry promised, though whether it was a reassurance or a warning, he wasn't entirely sure. The portkey activated, and the arcanum dissolved around them. Moments later, they stood in Harry's flat, the evening sun casting long shadows across the floor. Hermione immediately began casting detection spells. Checking for surveillance, she explained. If the department manipulated events to get you that tablet, who knows what else they've done. Harry nodded, grateful for her thoroughness. While she worked, he sent his Patronus to Ron with a simple message, meet us at my flat. Urgent news. The silver stag bounded away through the wall, and Harry sank onto his sofa, the weight of everything he'd learned pressing down on him. What are you thinking? Hermione asked, finishing her security checks. That I finally thought I was done being the chosen one, Harry replied with a wry smile that didn't reach his eyes. Turns out I was chosen for something even bigger. Hermione sat beside him. We don't have to accept Valeria's explanation at face value. The Department of Mysteries has its own agenda. True, but what happened today was real. Those Venatori weren't imagination, and neither are these, abilities. Harry touched his scar reflexively. I saw death shadows, Hermione. I knew exactly where to strike with that spell, exactly how to counter those wards. Something's definitely changing in me. Then we'll figure it out together, Hermione said firmly. Just like always. A soft pop of apparition announced Ron's arrival. He entered looking worried, wand at the ready. Got your message, he said, eyes scanning the room for threats before focusing on Harry. What's happened? You both look like you've seen Inferi. Close enough, Harry replied grimly. Sit down, Ron. We've got a lot to tell you. As the night deepened around them, Harry explained everything, the revelation about his scar being the Soilo rune, the Venatori attack, the memory of Ignotus Peveril, and the supposed quest for the Death Key. Ron listened with increasing disbelief, occasionally interjecting with questions or profanity. Bloody hell, he finally said when Harry finished. Just when I thought life was getting boring. So you're what, Death's ambassador now? With special powers and ancient cults trying to kill you? That's the simplest explanation, yes, Harry confirmed. Ron shook his head. Never a dull moment with you, mate. But beneath the humor, his expression was resolute. So what's our next move? I assume we're not just handing you over to the Department of Mysteries. Definitely not, Hermione agreed. We need to research independently. Confirm what Valeria told us, understand these abilities better, and locate this Death Key ourselves if it really exists. And stay ahead of the Venatori, Harry added. They found me once, they'll try again. We should bring in more help, Ron suggested. Ginny needs to know, for starters. And Luna might have insights, her father collects information on obscure magical phenomena. Neville too, Hermione added. He has access to Hogwarts' restricted section now that he's teaching there. Harry nodded, feeling a weight lifting slightly. Whatever he was becoming, whatever challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't face them alone. That made all the difference. Tomorrow, he decided. We'll gather everyone tomorrow and make a plan. For tonight. He held up the amulet Valeria had given him. I'm going to try to get some sleep without any visits from the dead or death-obsessed cultists. Ron clapped him on the shoulder. I'll take first watch, just in case. Hermione, you want to start pulling research materials? Already making a list, she confirmed, summoning parchment and a quill. As his friends fell into familiar roles, Ron securing the perimeter, Hermione organizing information, Harry felt a strange sense of déjà vu. Once again, they faced an uncertain threat together. Once again, his identity and purpose had been rewritten by forces beyond his control. But this time felt different. He wasn't a child thrust into an adult's war, or a teenager fulfilling a prophecy he never asked for. He was Harry Potter, experienced Auror, survivor, and now, apparently, Death's ambassador, whatever that truly meant. The silver amulet felt cool against his palm as he closed his fingers around it. His scar tingled with that now familiar energy, but for the first time since these strange occurrences began, Harry didn't resist the sensation. Instead, he acknowledged it, accepted it as part of himself. And somewhere, in the space between worlds, something acknowledged him back. Chapter 2, Boundaries Between Worlds. Harry woke to a room full of ghosts. Not literal ghosts like the ones at Hogwarts, these were different. Transparent figures stood motionless around his bed, watching him with hollow eyes. Some he recognized, Cedric Diggory, Lavender Brown, Colin Creevey, while others were strangers. All bore the marks of their deaths, frozen in that final moment. He bolted upright, heart hammering against his ribs. The amulet Valeria had given him lay on the nightstand where he'd placed it before falling into exhausted sleep. As he grabbed it and pressed it to his scar, the figures faded like smoke in wind. Shit, Harry whispered into the empty room. Sunlight streamed through the curtains he'd forgotten to close. His watch showed 7:22 a.m., he'd slept nearly 9 hours, longer than he had in weeks. The flat was quiet, Ron must have left after his watch shift. Harry swung his legs over the bed and rubbed his face. Despite the ghostly wake-up call, he felt strangely refreshed. The constant headache that had plagued him for months had vanished. He showered quickly, examining the amulet while water sluiced down his back. The silver disc featured intricate engravings, protective runes surrounding the central Soilo symbol that matched his scar. It clearly worked, dampening whatever connection was forming between him and the realm of death. But he couldn't wear it constantly. And part of him, a part growing stronger each day, didn't want to. By the time Harry finished dressing, his fireplace flared green. Ginny's face appeared in the flames, expression worried. "You're finally awake. Ron told me everything. I'm coming through." Before Harry could respond, she stepped from the fireplace in a rush of emerald flame, still wearing her Holyhead Harpies training gear. "You should have called me immediately," she said, crossing the room in 3 strides and pulling him into a tight embrace. Harry wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the familiar scent of broomstick polish and wildflowers. "It all happened so fast. I was going to contact you this morning. Ancient death cults, mysterious department agents, and you turning into some sort of grim reaper." Ginny pulled back to study his face. "Just another Tuesday for Harry Potter, right?" Despite everything, Harry laughed. This was why he loved her. Ginny never treated him with kid gloves. "More like Death's ambassador, apparently," he corrected. "And yeah, it's a lot to process." She ran her thumb lightly across his scar. "Does it hurt?" "No. It feels alive, somehow. Like it's part of me in a way it never was before." Harry captured her hand. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner about the visions and the tingling. I thought I was just dealing with PTSD or something." "Well, you can make it up to me by not keeping any more secrets." She squeezed his hand. "The others are gathering at Grimmauld Place. Hermione's turned the drawing room into Research Central." Harry raised his eyebrows. "Already? It's not even 8 a.m. You know Hermione. She probably didn't sleep." Ginny gestured toward the fireplace. "Ready?" Harry grabbed his wand and the silver amulet, slipping the latter into his pocket. As I'll ever be. Grimmauld Place had changed significantly since becoming the unofficial headquarters for their friend group. The once gloomy ancestral home of the Black family now featured bright walls, comfortable furniture, and none of the dark artifacts that had once filled its cabinets. Harry had given Ron and Hermione permanent residence in the West Wing while maintaining his own flat for Auror work. When Harry and Ginny stepped from the fireplace into the drawing room, they found it transformed into what looked like a war room. Books covered every surface, parchments with hastily scrawled notes hung from strings crisscrossing the ceiling, and a large map of Britain dominated one wall, with glowing markers indicating something. Hermione stood at the center of the chaos, directing operations like a general. Ron sat nearby, sorting through ancient-looking scrolls. Luna Lovegood hovered cross-legged 3 feet off the ground in a corner, reading an upside-down book. Neville Longbottom and Hannah Abbott were arranging potted plants along the windowsills for reasons Harry couldn't fathom. "He's here," Ron announced, looking up from his work. Everyone turned, and Harry felt a rush of gratitude for these people, friends who dropped everything the moment he needed them. "How are you feeling, Harry?" Luna asked dreamily, floating down to stand on the carpet. "Your aura's much more colorful today. Lots of gold and purple swirls." "I feel okay, actually," Harry admitted. "Physically better than I have in months." "That tracks with the accounts we've found," Hermione said, summoning a specific parchment from the mess. "According to this 12th century text, the awakening of Deathsight often relieves physical ailments as the body adjusts to processing energies from both realms." Harry blinked. "You found historical records of people like me?" "Not many, but yes." Hermione gestured to the strings of notes above. Luna's father had some surprisingly useful contacts. Records mention maybe a dozen individuals throughout history who bore the mark of the threshold and demonstrated abilities similar to what you're experiencing. "Dad's been collecting evidence for years," Luna confirmed. "He believes the ministry suppresses information about death ambassadors because they can't be controlled through conventional means." "That's actually plausible," Harry conceded, thinking of Valeria's secretive approach. Neville approached, wiping soil from his hands. "Professor McGonagall granted me access to the Founder's archives beneath the Hogwarts library. There are references to Rowena Ravenclaw studying the boundary between worlds and documenting her findings." "And the plants?" Harry asked, gesturing to the windowsills. "Boundary flora," Hannah explained. "Plants that grow at the edges of magical and non-magical environments. They react to fluctuations between realms, like magical canaries in a coal mine." Harry took it all in, moved by their immediate, practical response. No one questioned whether his experiences were real or suggested he might be losing his mind. They simply accepted and rallied. "Thank you," he said simply. "All of you. Don't get sappy on us, Potter," came a drawling voice from the doorway. "We haven't even started the dangerous parts yet." Draco Malfoy leaned against the doorframe, looking both out of place and somehow perfectly at home. His platinum hair was tied back, and he wore simple black robes with none of the aristocratic flourishes of his youth. Malfoy? Harry hadn't seen him in nearly a year, not since they'd grudgingly cooperated on a case involving cursed artifacts from Malfoy Manor. "I invited him," Hermione said quickly. "Draco's been researching ancient runic magic while restoring his family's original grimoires. He knows more about hereditary magic than anyone else we could trust." Draco's lip curled slightly at trust, but he entered without comment and tossed an ancient, leather-bound book onto the table. "My family's collection included references to the Mortis Venatori dating back 8 centuries. Apparently, they tried to recruit Armand Malfoy when he first came to Britain, claiming his bloodline carried death sense." Harry processed this unexpected alliance. Post-war Draco remained complicated, neither friend nor exactly enemy, but his expertise in old magic had proven valuable more than once. "Right," Harry said, making a decision. "Catch me up on what you found, and then I need to fill you in on something that happened this morning." For the next hour, the group shared their discoveries. Hermione had compiled historical accounts of supposed death ambassadors throughout history. Neville and Hannah identified magical plants and substances that interacted with the boundary between worlds. Luna contributed theoretical frameworks for understanding multidimensional existence. Ron mapped known Venatori activities based on aura intelligence. And Draco, surprisingly, provided the most concrete information about the Soilo rune itself. It's not just a symbol of power, he explained, showing Harry ancient diagrams. It's a doorway, literally a pathway between states of being. When inscribed on a living vessel, like your forehead, it creates a permanent connection between realms. So Voldemort didn't choose the shape of my scar? Harry asked. Oh, he chose it all right, Draco countered. But not consciously. The ancient magics respond to intent. When he tried to kill you with absolute certainty of success, the clash between your mother's protection and his killing curse created the perfect conditions for the rune to manifest. Like a magical perfect storm, Ginny suggested. Precisely, Draco nodded. The rune needed three things: a killing force, a sacrificial protection, and a soul capable of walking between worlds. Potter hit the magical lottery. Lucky me, Harry said dryly. After everyone had shared their findings, Harry described his ghostly morning visitors. The room fell silent as he detailed how the figures had appeared, not like regular ghosts but like echoes caught between worlds. They're leaking through, Luna said softly. The boundary's thinning. That aligns with what I found in Ravenclaw's notes, Neville added. She described something called the veil between worlds that could be damaged by catastrophic magical events. Like the destruction of multiple Horcruxes and the death of a Dark Lord who cheated death repeatedly. Hermione suggested grimly. Exactly like that, Draco confirmed. Magic has consequences. Voldemort's experiments with immortality didn't just fracture his soul, they damaged the boundary itself. Harry felt a chill. And now what? The dead are going to start walking among the living? Not exactly, Luna said. But the separation between realms is weakening. Those who died traumatically or have unfinished business may find it easier to manifest partially. Which is where you come in, Hermione concluded, looking at Harry. The Master of Death, or Death's Ambassador, maintains the balance between worlds when it's threatened. The weight of this new responsibility settled on Harry's shoulders. He'd never asked for this role, just as he'd never asked to be the boy who lived or the chosen one. But denying it wouldn't make it disappear. So I need to find this death key and repair the boundary, Harry summarized. And avoid getting killed by ancient death cultists in the process, Ron added helpfully. Speaking of which, Harry said, checking his watch, I'm supposed to meet Valeria for training in an hour. She claims she can help me control these abilities. You're not going alone, Ginny said immediately. Agreed, Hermione nodded. One of us should go with you. I'll do it, Draco volunteered unexpectedly. When everyone stared, he shrugged. What? I know more about runic magic than the rest of you, and I'm not emotionally attached to Potter. If this department woman tries anything suspicious, I won't hesitate. That's actually logical, Harry admitted, surprised. Don't sound so shocked, Potter. It happens occasionally. Draco smirked. Fine. Malfoy comes with me to meet Valeria. The rest of you keep digging into this death key. According to Valeria, it's the only way to fully control these abilities and potentially repair the boundary. And we need a contingency plan for the Venatori, Ron added. I've got aura resources I can tap discreetly, but we should establish safe houses beyond this one. They spent another half-hour organizing their approach before Harry and Draco prepared to leave. Be careful, Ginny said, pulling Harry aside. I don't trust this Valeria person. Department of Mysteries types always have multiple agendas. I know. Harry kissed her briefly. That's why I'm bringing my least trusting associate. I heard that, Draco called from across the room. You were meant to, Harry shot back, their old antagonism now tempered into something approaching collaboration. Harry activated the card Valeria had given him, touching his wand to it and murmuring, "So Ilo awakens." The card glowed briefly, then transformed into a small golden compass with a single arrow. "Subtle," Draco commented dryly. "Let's go," Harry said, pocketing the compass. "If we're not back in 3 hours, we'll come looking," Ron promised. "With reinforcements." Harry nodded, and he and Draco stepped through the fireplace, following the compass's guidance to whatever awaited them. The compass led them to a nondescript office building in Muggle London. To casual observers, it appeared to house accounting firms and small businesses, but Harry felt the magical wards humming as they approached, powerful but carefully disguised. "Ministry Safe House," Harry noted. "Officially decommissioned after the war, but apparently still in use." "Department of Mysteries doesn't decommission anything," Draco replied. "They just bury it deeper." They entered through a revolving door that subtly shifted as they passed through, depositing them not in an ordinary lobby but in a circular room with black marble floors and walls lined with silver instruments. Valeria stood at the center, her gray unspeakable robes exchanged for practical dark trousers and a fitted tunic. "You brought company," she observed, eyes narrowing at Draco. "Mr. Malfoy. The department has a file on your recent research efforts." "Charming," Draco replied coolly. "The department has files on everyone's private activities, I presume?" "Only those with significance to our areas of study." Valeria turned to Harry. "I was hoping for a one-on-one session, but I understand your caution." "No offense, but after yesterday's revelations and attack, I'm not taking unnecessary risks," Harry said. "None taken. Trust requires time." Valeria gestured to the room around them. This facility was designed specifically for training those with boundary-crossing abilities. The walls are lined with stabilizing runes to prevent accidental slippage between realms. Harry noticed the subtle engravings now, hundreds of interlocking symbols carved into the black marble. "What exactly are we doing today?" he asked. "3 things," Valeria replied, "all business. First, teaching you to control the death sight that's manifesting spontaneously. Second, helping you understand how to channel your energy consciously rather than reactively. And third, beginning to trace the location of the mortis clavis." She moved to a silver cabinet and removed what looked like a finely crafted dagger with runic inscriptions along its blade. "This is a boundary blade," she explained. "Forged at the precise moment of a solar eclipse, when the boundaries between realms naturally thin. It can cut through more than physical matter." Harry took it cautiously, feeling a strange resonance with his scar. "Why does he need a special knife?" Draco asked suspiciously. "Because," Valeria said, "sometimes you need to create doors where none exist." She directed Harry to the center of the room while Draco watched from the periphery, wand casually but unmistakably accessible. "Your abilities are manifesting chaotically because you're not controlling the flow between yourself and the death realm," Valeria explained. "The amulet I gave you blocks the connection entirely, useful for emergencies but prevents you from developing proper control." "Like magical training wheels," Harry suggested. "Precisely." Valeria nodded. "Now, place the blade against your palm, don't cut, just touch the metal to your skin." Harry did as instructed, feeling an immediate cold vibration from the contact. "The boundary blade amplifies your natural connection," Valeria continued. "Close your eyes and focus on the sensation. Visualize the boundary between worlds as a curtain or veil. You can approach it, touch it, even peer through it, without crossing." Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the blade's cold energy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, he sensed it, not with his eyes but with something deeper. A vast, shimmering curtain of energy stretching infinitely in all directions. "I can see it," he murmured. "Or, feel it, somehow." "Good," Valeria's voice seemed distant now. "The boundary is always present, but most can only perceive it at the moment of death. Your mark allows you conscious access. Now, imagine drawing the curtain aside just slightly, creating a small window. Harry focused, visualizing parting the energy curtain. The blade grew colder in his hand, his scar tingling with increasing intensity. Slowly, he felt the boundary respond, shifting like fabric under gentle pressure. And then he saw them, the same ghostly figures from his bedroom, but now more defined, more present. They stood in a gray, misty realm just beyond the window he'd created. "They see me," Harry whispered. "They're looking right at me." "They sense your connection to both realms," Valeria confirmed. "Now, practice closing the window, visualize the curtain closing completely." Harry concentrated, imagining the boundary sealing shut. The figures faded gradually, and the cold sensation receded. "Well done," Valeria said as Harry opened his eyes. "Most who bear the mark take weeks to achieve their first controlled viewing." Harry noticed Draco watching with uncharacteristic solemnity. "What did you see, Potter?" the blonde wizard asked quietly. "The dead," Harry replied simply. "But not like ghosts. More like people on the other side of a fogged window." "Did they try to communicate?" Valeria asked intently. "No. They just watched me. Recognized me somehow." Harry lowered the blade. "What happens if they try to cross over?" "That depends on your control," Valeria said. "The boundary exists for a reason. Mass crossover in either direction would be catastrophic for both realms. Your role as ambassador isn't to eliminate the boundary but to maintain its integrity while facilitating necessary transitions." "Necessary transitions?" Draco interrupted. "You mean deciding who lives and dies?" "Not exactly," Valeria clarified. "Death follows its own patterns. But sometimes, rarely, interventions are required when the natural order is disrupted. Like now, with the boundary weakening due to Voldemort's magic." Harry considered this. "So I'm meant to be some kind of magical boundary repair technician?" "A crude but not inaccurate description," Valeria allowed with a small smile. "Now, let's continue. The second skill you need is energy channeling." For the next hour, she guided Harry through exercises designed to help him consciously direct the power flowing from his scar. Draco occasionally offered insights from his runic research, especially when Harry struggled with visualizing the energy patterns. "Think of it like apparition focus," Draco suggested during one particularly frustrating attempt. "But instead of destination, you're focusing on transformation of energy from one state to another." That clicked for Harry, and suddenly he could direct the tingling energy from his scar down his arm and into his wand hand. His wand tip glowed with golden light when he succeeded. "Excellent," Valeria nodded approvingly. "This channeling will help you control when and how your abilities manifest, rather than having them emerge randomly in response to stress or danger." By the end of the second hour, Harry could consistently open small windows to view the death realm and channel the energy from his scar into controlled bursts. He felt simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated, like after his first successful flying lessons. "You're progressing faster than anticipated," Valeria noted as they took a brief break. She offered water from a silver flask that tasted subtly of herbs and honey. "The mark has been preparing you longer than we realized." "What do you mean?" Harry asked, passing the flask to Draco, who sniffed it suspiciously before taking a cautious sip. "Your experiences throughout life," Valeria explained. "Surviving the killing curse twice. Your connection to Voldemort. Mastering the Hallows. Walking willingly to your death and returning. Each event strengthened your affinity for boundary crossing." Draco was studying the wall engravings with professional interest. "These containment runes," he said abruptly. "They're older than the Department of Mysteries itself, aren't they? Pre-Ministry era." Valeria raised an eyebrow. "Very observant, Mr. Malfoy." "Yes, this facility predates the Ministry's formal establishment. It was originally created by the Council of Wizards in the 14th century. For training Death Ambassadors?" Harry asked. "For containing them, initially," Valeria corrected. The council feared those with your abilities. Later, more enlightened leaders recognized the necessity of your role and converted this from a prison to a training ground. That revelation hung uncomfortably in the air. Are there others like me now? Harry asked. Other ambassadors? No, Valeria said firmly. The mark chooses one bearer per era. When one ambassador passes beyond, the mark eventually finds another worthy vessel. You are currently the only living person with this capacity. Lucky me, Harry muttered for the second time that day. Indeed, Valeria said, missing or ignoring his sarcasm. Now, for our final task, beginning to locate the mortis clavis. She retrieved a large silver bowl similar to a pensieve but with runic engravings around its rim. Filling it with clear water from her wand, she gestured for Harry to approach. The Death Key's location is hidden through a series of magical veils and tests designed to be navigated only by the true master, she explained. This scrying bowl was created by your predecessor to provide glimpses of the path. My predecessor? Harry frowned. You mean the last person who bore this mark? Yes. A witch named Eliana Graves who lived during the late 1800s. She helped contain a catastrophic breach during an experiment gone wrong at the department. Afterward, she left Britain and eventually died in Tibet while researching ancient boundary magic. Harry felt a strange kinship with this unknown witch who had carried the same burden he now bore. What happened to the mark when she died? He asked. It went dormant until it found you, Valeria replied simply. And how exactly do I use this scrying bowl? Harry asked, studying the runes that looked strangely familiar despite never having studied them. You need to add a drop of your blood to the water, Valeria instructed. The bowl will respond to the mark's energy. Harry hesitated, years of magical experience having taught him caution about blood magic. It's safe, Potter, Draco said unexpectedly. Those are seeking runes, not binding ones. I'd tell you if she was trying to enslave you to her will. Harry shot him a surprised look, and Draco shrugged. What? I've reformed, not lobotomized myself. I still know dark magic when I see it. Taking the boundary blade, Harry made a small cut on his finger and allowed a single drop of blood to fall into the clear water. The liquid immediately began to swirl, changing from clear to deep blue shot through with gold. Now place your marked hand above the water, Valeria instructed. Don't touch the surface, just hover a few inches above. Harry positioned his hand as directed, feeling his scar pulse with energy. The water below began to shimmer and shift, forming images that changed too quickly to identify clearly. Focus on the key, Valeria urged. Ask the bowl to show you its location. How am I supposed to ask a bowl anything? Harry muttered. Intent, Potter, Draco suggested from behind him. Like with Room of Requirement. Clear visualization of what you need. Harry nodded and concentrated on the concept of the Death Key, forming a question in his mind, where is the mortis clavis hidden? The swirling water settled suddenly, revealing a familiar image that made Harry's breath catch. Hogwarts, he whispered. The castle appeared in perfect detail, but then the image zoomed in, diving down through stone floors, past the dungeons, deeper than Harry had ever ventured. There's something beneath the castle, Harry described as the vision continued. A chamber I've never seen. Circular, with 7 doorways. The walls are covered in constellations, and in the center. The vision abruptly dissolved, the water returning to its clear state. In the center what? Valeria pressed. I don't know. The vision ended. Harry removed his hand from above the bowl, feeling drained. But it was definitely Hogwarts, and definitely somewhere deep beneath the known levels. Draco stepped forward with interest. The founders were rumored to have created a chamber of prophecy beneath the castle, separate from the one in the Department of Mysteries. A place where the fundamental magic of the school originated. That aligns with our records, Valeria confirmed. The mortis clavis was entrusted to Rowena Ravenclaw for safekeeping. She likely concealed it within Hogwarts' deepest secrets. Harry thought of all the secrets the castle had already revealed to him over the years, the Chamber of Secrets, the Room of Requirement, countless hidden passages. Even after all this time, Hogwarts continued to guard ancient mysteries. We need to get into Hogwarts, Harry decided. Without alerting the Ministry or the Venatori that we're searching there. Fortunately, Draco drawled, we have a professor who can grant us access without questions. Neville, Harry nodded. And it's summer holiday, so the castle is mostly empty except for staff. I should accompany you, Valeria said immediately. The chamber will contain tests designed specifically for the mark-bearer. My expertise could be valuable. Harry exchanged a look with Draco, a silent communication passing between them despite their complicated history. We appreciate the offer, Harry said carefully, but I think it's best if we handle this part with my existing team. Less official attention that way. Disappointment flashed across Valeria's features before her professional mask returned. As you wish. But take the boundary blade. You'll need it to navigate the tests. She handed Harry the blade and a small leather sheath for it. Continue your exercises daily. The more control you develop, the less vulnerable you'll be to both the Venatori and accidental boundary breaches. Harry nodded, slipping the blade into its sheath and securing it inside his jacket. Thank you for today's training. It's helped clarify a lot. One more thing, Valeria said as they prepared to leave. The Venatori will be watching Hogwarts now that the key's general location has been revealed. They have ways of detecting significant boundary magic. How would they know what we discovered today? Draco asked sharply. Because, Valeria said grimly, they have infiltrated most magical institutions over centuries. Including Hogwarts itself. Trust no one who doesn't already know your secret, Auror Potter. With that ominous warning, she escorted them to the exit, which returned them to the Muggle street outside the building. Well, that was informative and terrifying, Draco commented as they walked toward a secure apparition point. Your life continues to be absurdly complicated, Potter. Tell me about it, Harry agreed. What's your assessment of Valeria? Truthful? Manipulative? Both? Draco considered this seriously. She's definitely not telling the whole truth, but what she has shared seems accurate based on my research. I think she genuinely wants to help you master these abilities, but likely for reasons beyond what she's stating. That's my read too, Harry nodded. The question is, what's her actual agenda? The Department of Mysteries always has the same fundamental goal, Draco replied. The acquisition and control of magical knowledge. You represent something they can't fully understand or contain, that terrifies and fascinates them simultaneously. They reached the apparition point, an unassuming alley shielded from Muggle view by subtle notice-me-not charms. Ready to tell the others we need to break into a secret chamber under Hogwarts while avoiding an ancient death cult? Harry asked with grim humor. Just like old times for you, isn't it? Draco smirked. Some people collect chocolate frog cards. You collect life-threatening magical adventures. Harry laughed despite himself, and they disappeared with twin cracks of apparition, unaware of the hooded figure watching from a nearby rooftop, eyes fixed on the spot where they had stood. Back at Grimmauld Place, the team's reaction to their discovery was mixed. A secret chamber under Hogwarts? Ron groaned. Again? Seriously? At least it's not full of basilisks this time, Ginny pointed out. Probably. Neville looked thoughtful. I've heard rumors among the faculty about lower levels beneath the dungeons. Areas sealed off for centuries. McGonagall might know something. Can we trust her with this information? Hermione asked pragmatically. The fewer people who know about Harry's condition, the safer he is from the Venatori. McGonagall's trustworthy, Harry said firmly. But Valeria warned that the Venatori have infiltrated Hogwarts somehow. We need to be careful about who we approach. Luna, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke. The chamber you described, Harry, with the constellation walls and 7 doorways, matches an account in my father's journals. A place called the Nexus of Founders, where the original magic of Hogwarts was woven. All eyes turned to her. Your father's journals mention this place? Hermione asked skeptically. How would he know about it? Mum, Luna said simply. Before she died, she was researching boundary magic too. She believed Hogwarts was built on a natural thin spot between realms. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. Harry had never considered that Luna's eccentric father might actually possess valuable information rather than just conspiracy theories. Right, he decided. Neville, can you get us into Hogwarts tomorrow night? Preferably through a less monitored entrance. Neville nodded. There's a staff passage near the greenhouses. I can have you in without anyone the wiser. We can't all go, Hermione pointed out practically. A large group would attract attention. Harry, Neville because he's our access, and one more, Ron suggested. Small team, maximum mobility. I'll go, Luna volunteered. I've been studying my mother's notes on boundary magic. I might recognize the tests the chamber presents. Harry nodded, trusting her intuition despite her dreamy demeanor. Luna's unconventional perspective had saved them before. The rest of us will maintain research here and prepare backup if needed, Hermione said, already organizing parchment for communication charms. I can modify the DA galleons to work as emergency signals. They spent the remainder of the day preparing. Harry practiced the techniques Valeria had taught him, finding that channeling the energy from his scar became easier with each attempt. Ginny helped him test his control, noting when the death sight activated accidentally and helping him shut it down. As evening fell, Harry stepped outside to the small garden behind Grimmauld Place, needing a moment alone to process everything. The boundary blade rested heavily against his side, a constant reminder of his new reality. He heard the door open behind him but didn't turn, recognizing Ginny's footsteps. Canute for your thoughts, she asked, joining him on the bench. Just wondering how I always end up in these situations, Harry replied, attempting lightness but falling short. Normal people don't discover their mystical ambassadors between life and death 5 years after defeating Dark Lords. Normal people are overrated, Ginny countered, leaning against him. Besides, if you were normal, you'd have never caught my eye. Harry smiled despite himself. Fair point. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Ginny spoke again, her tone more serious. Are you afraid? Of what you're becoming? Harry considered the question carefully. Not afraid exactly. More, concerned about what it means. Every time I use these abilities, I feel more connected to something vast and ancient. Like I'm tapping into a current that could easily sweep me away if I'm not careful. Ginny took his hand. Then stay anchored. To us. To this world. Whatever happens in that chamber tomorrow, remember you're still Harry, just Harry, to the people who love you. Harry squeezed her hand, grateful for her grounding presence. Ginny had always seen him clearly, never blinded by his reputation or titles. Get some rest, she advised, standing. Tomorrow you hunt for magical keys in secret chambers. Very on brand for you. Harry laughed and followed her inside, where their friends continued preparations for tomorrow's expedition. Despite the uncertainty ahead, Harry felt a familiar determination settling in his chest. Whatever challenges the chamber held, he wouldn't face them alone. The next evening found Harry, Luna, and Neville approaching Hogwarts through the summer twilight. The castle stood silhouetted against the darkening sky, windows glowing warmly in contrast to the growing shadows. Neville led them along a rarely used path that skirted the edge of the forbidden forest, eventually bringing them to a small door partially hidden by climbing ivy near Greenhouse 3. Staff and trance, he explained quietly, tapping his wand in a specific pattern against the ancient wood. Connects directly to the lower levels. Sprout showed me when I started teaching. The door swung open silently, revealing a narrow stone staircase spiraling downward. Neville lit his wand and led the way, Harry and Luna following closely behind. The castle feels different, Luna observed as they descended. Can you sense it, Harry? The magic is more attentive. Harry knew exactly what she meant. The ambient magic of Hogwarts, always present but usually background noise to his senses, felt alert, almost expectant, as if the castle itself had awakened to their presence. It knows why we're here, he murmured. They emerged into a lesser-used corridor in the dungeons, not far from the potions classroom but away from the Slytherin common room. At this time of year, with students gone and most staff away, the dungeons were eerily silent. According to the vision, we need to go deeper, Harry said, his scar tingling slightly as if confirming his words. Is there a way down from here? Neville hesitated. There's a maintenance access point the house elves use. It supposedly goes to the foundations, but I've never been past the first sublevel. He led them to what appeared to be an ordinary stone wall, distinguished only by a small, worn carving of a badger near floor level. Hufflepuff's mark, Luna noted, kneeling to examine it. Guardian of foundations and secrets of the earth. Neville tapped the badger with his wand. Foundations secure, he murmured. The wall shimmered and revealed a narrow passage barely wide enough for one person. Cool air wafted up from below, carrying the scent of ancient stone and something else, a faint metallic tang that made Harry's scar prickle. I'll go first, Harry decided, lighting his wand and stepping into the passage. The stairs descended in a tight spiral, the walls close on either side. After what felt like hundreds of steps, they emerged into a wider corridor lined with unlit torches. Harry flicked his wand, and the torches ignited with blue-white flames that cast elongated shadows across the rough-hewn walls. We're below the dungeons now, Neville whispered, his voice echoing slightly despite his effort to stay quiet. This level isn't on any map of Hogwarts I've ever seen. They moved forward cautiously. The corridor branched repeatedly, creating a labyrinthine network that would have been easy to get lost in without guidance. But Harry felt a subtle pull from his scar, an instinctive knowing of which path to take. Left here, he said at one junction. Then right at the next fork. Luna observed him curiously. You can sense the key's location. Not exactly, Harry tried to explain. It's more like, the mark is drawing me towards something it recognizes. After nearly 20 minutes of navigating the maze-like passages, they reached a circular antechamber with a single massive door of black stone. No handle or keyhole interrupted its smooth surface, but intricate carvings covered every inch, star maps, runic sequences, and flowing script in a language Harry didn't recognize. Ancient Celtic, Luna translated, studying the inscriptions. It says, speak with marked voice, ambassador of the threshold. Declare your purpose to enter the nexus of founders. Harry approached the door, feeling his scar warm as he drew nearer. Instinctively, he placed his palm against the stone and spoke words that came to him unbidden, I seek the key to balance the worlds. I come as bridge, not barrier. I come as guide, not governor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the carvings began to glow with soft golden light, tracing patterns across the door's surface until they connected with Harry's hand. The black stone dissolved like mist, revealing a short passageway beyond that opened into a much larger chamber. That was incredible, Neville breathed. The door recognized you specifically. The mark, not me, Harry corrected, though he wasn't entirely sure that was accurate. They stepped through the passage and entered the chamber from Harry's vision. It was perfectly circular, easily 50 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling that displayed the night sky in real time, stars shimmering against deep blue-black. 7 arched doorways were spaced evenly around the perimeter, each sealed with a different colored barrier of shimmering energy. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform with an ornate pedestal. Nothing rested upon it, the key was not here, at least not visibly. The nexus, Luna whispered reverently. A perfect meeting point between worlds. The moment they fully entered, the passageway behind them sealed itself, the black stone door reforming from mist. Well, that's encouraging, Neville commented dryly. Harry approached the central pedestal, studying the inscriptions carved around its base, the same symbol repeated 7 times in different configurations. Soilo, he recognized. The rune from my scar. Each variation connects to a different doorway, Luna observed, pointing to how the runes aligned with each archway. I think this is a test, Harry. You need to determine which door leads to the key. Harry examined the pedestal more closely and found a shallow depression in its top surface, a perfect match for his palm, with the Soilo rune etched at its center. Seems straightforward enough, he muttered, placing his hand in the depression. The moment he made contact, all 7 doorways flared brightly, their energy barriers pulsing in sequence. Images formed within each shimmering field, showing different locations. The first displayed the Department of Mystery's death chamber, with its ancient stone archway and fluttering veil. The second showed the forbidden forest clearing where Harry had once faced Voldemort and death. The third revealed Godric's hollow cemetery, focusing on his parents' graves. The fourth displayed the Chamber of Secrets, the basilisk skeleton still curled where it had fallen. The fifth showed the crystal cave where Dumbledore had drunk the terrible potion protecting the Horcrux. The sixth revealed King's Cross Station as Harry had seen it during his near-death experience, pristine white and eerily empty. And the seventh showed a location Harry didn't recognize, a stone circle on a windswept hill, ancient megaliths arranged in a pattern that somehow resembled the Soilo rune when viewed from above. 7 gateways, Luna said quietly. But only one leads to the key. The others are either false paths or additional trials. How do I know which is which? Harry asked, hand still pressed to the pedestal. The inscription mentions that which lies between, Luna translated, examining the pedestal's base. Between life and death, perhaps. Harry stared at each doorway in turn, considering their significance. Each location represented some connection to death or boundary magic. Each held personal significance to his journey. I need to see more clearly, he decided, withdrawing the boundary blade with his free hand. The moment he touched it to his marked palm, his perception shifted. The death sight activated, but differently than before, more controlled, more focused. He could now see additional layers in each doorway's image. Behind some doorways lurked shadowy figures reminiscent of the Venatori. Behind others, strange magical traps pulsed with lethal energy. But the seventh doorway, showing the stone circle, revealed something different. Beyond its barrier, a golden thread stretched into the distance, connecting directly to his scar. The seventh door, Harry said with certainty. It's the true path. He removed his hand from the pedestal and approached the seventh archway. Its barrier shimmered with deep violet energy that parted like water at his touch, allowing him to pass through unharmed. Luna and Neville followed closely, the barrier admitting them as his companions. Beyond the doorway stretched not a physical corridor but a bridge of pure magic, a translucent pathway floating in what appeared to be liminal space, neither fully in the physical world nor entirely elsewhere. Swirling mists surrounded them on all sides, occasionally parting to reveal glimpses of other places and times. We're walking between worlds, Luna breathed, her normally dreamy expression replaced with wonder. The boundary itself has become a path. Stay close, Harry cautioned. Don't stray from the bridge. They advanced carefully along the shimmering pathway. Harry could feel his scar responding to this place, the tingling sensation stronger but not painful, more like recognition. After walking for what might have been minutes or hours, time seemed oddly flexible here. The path widened into a circular platform. At its center stood a stone altar similar to the pedestal in the Nexus chamber, but this one held an object, a small silver key inlaid with black stone and inscribed with the Soilo rune. The Mortis Clavis, Harry identified immediately, knowing with absolute certainty. As they approached the altar, a figure materialized before them, neither ghost nor solid being, but something between. It appeared as a tall, androgynous person with silver-white hair and eyes that shifted color with every blink. They wore robes that seemed woven from the same swirling mist that surrounded the platform. Ambassador, the figure greeted, voice neither male nor female but somehow both. You have found your way to the threshold. I am Kairos, guardian of the key. Harry stepped forward. I've come for the Mortis Clavis. The boundary between worlds is weakening. Kairos nodded solemnly. I have felt the damage. The one who defied natural transition created fractures that now threaten both realms. Their color-shifting eyes studied Harry intently. But possessing the key is not simply a matter of taking it, young ambassador. It requires understanding. Understanding of what? Harry asked. Of what it truly means to master death. Kairos gestured, and the mists around them shifted to display images, Harry confronting Voldemort in the forest, walking with Dumbledore in the White King's Cross, returning to life in Hagrid's arms. You believe you know death because you have faced it and returned, Kairos continued. But that was merely your first step. True mastery is not conquest or evasion. It is not immortality or resurrection. Then what is it? Harry pressed. Kairos smiled enigmatically. Show me what you believe. Approach the key. Harry moved toward the altar, aware of Luna and Neville watching tensely from a few paces behind. As he neared the Mortis Clavis, he could feel its power resonating with his scar, ancient magic recognizing ancient magic. If you take the key, believing mastery means control over death, it will destroy you, Kairos warned. If you take it, believing mastery means escaping death, it will abandon you. Only with the correct understanding will it serve its purpose. Harry paused, hand hovering above the key. What did mastery of death truly mean? Not controlling it, his experiences had taught him death couldn't be truly conquered, even by Voldemort with his Horcruxes or the Peverell brothers with their Hallows. Not escaping it, everyone died eventually. Even his own brief respite had been for a specific purpose, not a permanent evasion. The answer came to him suddenly, clarity blooming from all his experiences, with his parents' sacrifice, with Sirius beyond the veil, with Dumbledore's planned death, with his own willing walk into the forest. Mastery of death means acceptance, Harry said quietly. Understanding that death isn't an enemy to be defeated or a friend to be embraced, it's a transition to be respected. A master of death doesn't control the transition but helps maintain its proper balance and dignity. Kairos's eyes settled briefly into a deep, approving blue. Well reasoned, young ambassador. Now take what is yours by right and responsibility. Harry reached for the key. The moment his fingers touched the cool silver, a surge of energy flowed between it and his scar. The key levitated slightly, hovering above his palm and spinning slowly before settling back into his grasp. The Mortis Clavis acknowledges you, Kairos confirmed. With it, you may mend the weakened boundaries and navigate between realms when necessary. But remember, you are a bridge, not a barrier. A guide, not a governor. What exactly does the key do? Harry asked, studying the small object now resting in his palm. Despite its size, it felt weighty with potential and purpose. It grants 3 powers to the worthy ambassador, Kairos explained. First, it allows conscious passage between realms without the trauma of death. Second, it can repair breaches in the boundary fabric. And third, it helps restore those caught between worlds to their proper place. Those caught between? Luna asked, speaking for the first time since Kairos appeared. Souls who cannot fully cross due to unnatural circumstances, Kairos clarified. Those trapped by dark magic, violent deaths, or ritual interference. Those who, in your world, might manifest as spectral echoes or destructive spirits. Harry thought of the ghostly figures appearing in his bedroom and elsewhere, signs of the weakening boundary. How do I use it to repair the damage Voldemort caused? He asked. You must locate the points of greatest fracture and apply the key directly, Kairos instructed. The most significant breach lies where he performed his final resurrection ritual, drawing himself forcibly back from the threshold. The second exists where he died his final death, the unnatural fragmentation of his soul creating distortion. Little Hangleton Graveyard and Hogwarts Great Hall, Harry identified immediately. Correct. But beware, the Venatori sense these weaknesses too. They seek not to repair but to exploit them for their own purpose. Which is what, exactly? Neville asked suspiciously. Kairos turned those shifting eyes toward him. They believe death should be absolute and impermeable. No exceptions, no transitions except the final one. They would seal the boundary permanently, preventing even the natural communications that have always existed between realms. That sounds extreme, Harry observed. Indeed. Balance requires both separation and controlled connection. The boundary must be maintained but never made absolute. Kairos's form began to shimmer slightly, becoming less distinct. Our time grows short, Ambassador. The liminal space cannot sustain physical visitors for long. Wait, Harry said urgently. Are you dead? Alive? Something else entirely? Kairos smiled mysteriously. I am Kairos, the moment between moments, the breath between heartbeats. I exist where transitions occur. Neither fully alive nor truly dead, but present wherever the boundary thins. Will I see you again? Harry asked. When you walk the threshold, I am always near. Kairos gestured toward the path they had followed. Now go. Begin your work. The fractures grow wider with each passing day. The Guardian's form dissolved into the surrounding mist as the key grew warm in Harry's hand. We should return, Luna suggested gently. This place isn't meant for prolonged physical presence. Harry nodded, pocketing the key carefully. As they turned to leave, the mists parted briefly, showing a disturbing glimpse beyond their path, hooded figures moving through what appeared to be the Department of Mysteries, led by a tall, imposing presence that radiated cold purpose. The Venatori Grandmaster, Harry recognized instinctively, his scar flaring in warning. They're moving against us already. Then we move faster, Neville said grimly, leading them back along the bridge toward the Nexus chamber. The return journey seemed quicker, the path more direct. They emerged through the seventh doorway back into the circular chamber, finding the other 6 doorways now sealed completely. The test is complete, Luna observed. The chamber acknowledges your success. As if confirming her words, the black stone and trance dissolved once more, revealing the passage back to Hogwarts' lower levels. Let's get back to the others, Harry said, touching the key through his pocket. We need to plan our next steps carefully. They retraced their path through the labyrinthine corridors, emerging eventually into the familiar dungeons of Hogwarts. As they passed the potions classroom, Harry felt a sudden, sharp spike of warning from his scar. He stopped abruptly, raising a hand to halt his companions. Someone's coming, he whispered, drawing his wand. Neville pulled them into a shadowy alcove as footsteps approached, 2 sets, moving with deliberate quietness. Harry concentrated, focusing his newfound senses, and felt the cold energy he now associated with the Venatori. They're already here, he breathed. In the castle. Luna's eyes widened. How did they find us so quickly? Someone must have alerted them, Neville suggested grimly, drawing his own wand. Valeria mentioned they had infiltrated Hogwarts. The footsteps drew closer. Harry made a quick decision, withdrawing the boundary blade with his left hand while keeping his wand ready in his right. I'm going to try something, he whispered. Be ready to move. Focusing on the blade and the energy from his scar, Harry visualized not a window to the Death Realm this time, but a partial shift in his own presence, becoming slightly less substantial, less detectable. The magic responded immediately. A strange sensation washed over him, like being partially disillusioned but more profound. He could see his body becoming translucent, existing partially between realms. Grab my shoulders, he instructed his friends. Quickly. Luna and Neville each placed a hand on one of his shoulders, and Harry extended the effect to include them. All 3 shifted partially out of phase with the physical world, not invisible, but existing in a state that would be difficult for most observers to perceive clearly. Just in time. 2 hooded figures rounded the corner, moving with unnatural grace. Unlike the Venatori Harry had encountered in the department, these appeared fully physical, human agents rather than the semi-spectral entities. The energy signature was here, one said in a low voice. The ambassador accessed the nexus. Did he obtain the key? The second asked. Unknown. The Grand Master wants us to secure the exit points regardless. They passed within feet of the alcove where Harry, Luna, and Neville stood partially phased. One paused briefly, turning toward them with a slight frown visible beneath the hood, but then continued on toward the staff and trance they had used earlier. Once the Venatori agents were safely past, Harry released the boundary magic, bringing them fully back to the physical realm. The effort left him slightly lightheaded. That was brilliant, Neville whispered appreciatively. But now they're watching our exit. Not all of them, Harry replied. We'll use the main entrance. It's summer, the gates won't be sealed like during term time. They altered their route, taking a different staircase up to the entrance hall. Moving cautiously and using Harry's enhanced senses to detect any nearby Venatori, they eventually reached the massive front doors and slipped out into the summer night. The grounds lay peaceful under starlight as they hurried toward the gates. Harry kept the boundary blade ready, prepared to shift them out of phase again if necessary, but they encountered no further Venatori agents. Once beyond Hogwarts boundaries, they apparat directly to Grimmauld Place, arriving in the protected garden behind the house rather than risking the street. The drawing room was still occupied despite the late hour. Ron, Hermione, Ginny, and Draco looked up as they entered, expressions moving quickly from concern to relief. You're back! Hermione exclaimed, rushing forward. Did you find it? Harry withdrew the mortis clavis from his pocket, holding it up for all to see. The small silver key gleamed in the lamplight, its black stone inlay seeming to absorb shadows. We found it, he confirmed. But the Venatori were right behind us. They've infiltrated Hogwarts somehow. That's not all, Ron said grimly, handing Harry that evening's special edition of the Daily Prophet. While you were gone, there was an attack at the Ministry. Harry scanned the headline with growing dread, Department of Mysteries breach, 3 unspeakables dead, artifacts stolen. Valeria, he murmured, quickly reading the article. Is she among the casualties? No names released yet, Ginny said. But the attack targeted the same section where you encountered the Venatori before. Harry exchanged significant looks with Draco. We need to contact her. Already tried, Hermione said, holding up the communication card Valeria had given Harry. It's not responding. Either she can't answer or she's involved somehow, Draco finished bluntly. Harry paced the room, mind racing. We met a guardian in the liminal space, Kairos. They explained that I need to use the key to repair 2 major breaches in the boundary, at Little Hangleton where Voldemort was resurrected, and in the Great Hall where he died. But you can't just walk into Hogwarts again, Ron pointed out. Not if the Venatori are watching it. Little Hangleton first, then, Harry decided. It's more remote, less likely to be under surveillance. We should go immediately, Luna suggested. The boundary continues to weaken with each passing hour. First, we need to understand exactly how to use the key, Hermione said pragmatically. And we need a plan in case the Venatori are watching Little Hangleton too. Harry nodded, removing the boundary blade and setting it beside the key on the table. Kairos said I need to apply the key directly to the points of fracture. I'm guessing it works similarly to the boundary blade, accessing the liminal space between worlds. We should split into 2 teams, Ron suggested, falling easily into strategic planning. One group goes with Harry to perform the repair, while the other maintains defensive positions. As they debated tactics, Harry felt a sudden sharp pain in his scar, not like the old connection to Voldemort, but a new sensation, as if the boundary itself was crying out in distress. He gasped, pressing a hand to his forehead. Harry. Ginny was immediately at his side. What is it? Something's wrong, he managed through clenched teeth. Something's happening to the boundary, right now. The lights in the room flickered and dimmed. Temperature dropped sharply, frost forming on the windowpanes despite the summer night outside. And then they appeared, ghostly figures materializing throughout the room, more substantial than before, their features twisted with confusion or anguish. "The dead are crossing over," Luna whispered, wide-eyed. "The boundary is failing." One ghost, a young woman in clothing several decades out of date, approached Harry directly, her transparent hand reaching for him. "Ambassador," she said, voice distant yet clear. "The Venatori have accelerated the collapse. They're using the fractures to draw energy from the death realm." "Using it for what?" Harry asked, fighting through the pain in his scar to focus. "To seal the boundary permanently," the ghost replied. "To end all transition between worlds. No ghosts, no return, no communication across the veil, ever." "But that would destroy the natural order," she confirmed. "Death must be final, yes, but the realms have always maintained certain connections. What they attempt is abomination." The ghost began to fade, the effort of manifestation clearly taxing. "Hurry, Ambassador. They gather at the Ministry's veil, the original tear between worlds. From there, they can affect all boundaries." With those words, she and the other apparitions vanished. The temperature returned to normal, and the lights brightened once more. The Department of Mystery's attack, Hermione realized. It wasn't just a theft, they were accessing the death chamber. "The veil," Harry nodded grimly. "That's why they targeted the unspeakables. They're using the archway to manipulate the boundary itself." "But why accelerate the weakening?" Ron asked, confused. "If they want to seal the boundary. Because they need maximum access to Death Realm energy before closing it forever," Draco explained, his academic understanding of ritual magic clicking into place. "Break it completely open, drain the power, then seal it permanently with that power. Standard magical exploitation tactic." "Then we need to stop them now," Harry said firmly, pocketing both the key and blade. "They're at the Ministry, and we're going there too." "That's exactly what they want," Neville cautioned. "Drawing you into their territory." "We don't have a choice," Harry replied. "If what that ghost said is true, they're already performing the ritual. We're out of time for careful planning." Ginny squared her shoulders. "Then we go together. Like old times." "Not exactly like old times," Draco drawled, though he too stood ready. "This time we actually know what we're doing." "More or less." Harry looked around at his friends, at Ron's steady determination, Hermione's calculating focus, Ginny's fierce readiness, Luna's serene certainty, Neville's quiet courage, and even Draco's reluctant commitment. Together, they had faced death and darkness before and emerged victorious. "The Ministry will be locked down after the attack," Hermione warned. "We can't just walk in through the atrium." "We don't need to," Harry said, withdrawing the mortis clavis. "I think I know what this is really for." He concentrated on the key, feeling its resonance with his scar. With instincts he didn't fully understand but increasingly trusted, Harry focused on the concept of the death chamber, the stone archway with its fluttering veil between worlds. The key grew warm in his hand, then hot. Golden light erupted from the Soilo rune embedded in the black stone, projecting into the air before them. The light expanded, widening into an arch identical to the one in the Department of Mysteries. "A direct path," Harry explained, sensing his friend's awe. "The key doesn't just repair boundaries, it creates passages between them when needed." "Bloody brilliant," Ron breathed. "I'll go first," Harry decided. "I can sense if there are Venatori waiting on the other side." He stepped toward the golden archway, the key still extended before him. As he approached the light, he felt the boundary blade at his side grow cold, responding to proximity with the liminal space. "Be ready for anything," he warned his friends, then stepped through the archway into whatever awaited on the other side. The world shifted and blurred around him. For a brief moment, Harry existed everywhere and nowhere, surrounded by the now familiar mists of the space between worlds. Then reality solidified, and he found himself exactly where he'd intended, the death chamber in the Department of Mysteries. But he wasn't alone. A semicircle of hooded Venatori surrounded the ancient stone archway, their hands raised in complex ritual gestures. Dark energy pulsed between them and the veil, which fluttered more violently than Harry had ever seen, occasionally revealing glimpses of what lay beyond, the realm of the dead, normally hidden from living eyes. At the center of the semicircle stood a commanding figure taller than the others, wearing robes of deepest black trimmed with silver runes. Unlike the others, his hood was lowered, revealing a face that might once have been handsome but now appeared weathered by centuries rather than decades, unnaturally aged, with eyes like dark pits that reflected no light. The Grand Master. Behind him, secured to a stone pillar with magical bindings, was Valeria. Her grey unspeakable robes were torn and bloody, but her eyes were alert and widened when she saw Harry emerge from nowhere. The Grand Master turned slowly, seemingly unsurprised by Harry's arrival. His voice, when he spoke, carried the same hollow quality Harry had heard from the other Venatori, but with greater presence and authority. "The ambassador arrives," he announced. "Just as the prophecy foretold. The marked one comes to witness the restoration of natural law." Harry gripped both the key and his wand, assessing the situation quickly. 7 Venatori including the Grand Master. Valeria incapacitated. The ritual already in progress, with the veil between worlds destabilizing further with each passing second. "This isn't restoration," Harry countered, stalling while he felt his friends beginning to emerge from the golden passage behind him. "You're not preserving natural law, you're perverting it. The boundary was never meant to be absolute." The Grand Master's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. Such certainty from one so new to his power. "What do you know of the boundary's purpose, child? We have safeguarded its integrity for millennia. By trying to destroy it?" Harry challenged, sensing Ginny and Ron now positioned behind him, with the others following. "By perfecting it," the Grand Master corrected. "Death must be absolute. Final. The mingling of realms leads only to corruption and suffering." "You're wrong," Harry said firmly. "Death isn't meant to be a wall but a doorway, not to be crossed casually, but not sealed forever either. Your predecessor said similar words before we ended her interference," the Grand Master noted coldly. "Eliana Graves believed as you do, that death could be negotiated with, that boundaries were mere suggestions. Her arrogance cost her everything." Behind the Grand Master, Valeria struggled against her bonds, trying to communicate something to Harry with her eyes. Following her gaze, Harry noticed a subtle disruption in the ritual pattern, one Venatori slightly out of position, creating a weakness. "You killed her," Harry guessed, keeping the Grand Master talking while signaling his friends to spread out using the slightest hand movements. "The previous ambassador. We corrected an aberration," the Grand Master replied. "As we will correct you." He raised his hands, and the ritual energy intensified. The veil in the archway billowed violently, and Harry felt the pain in his scar spike in response. Beyond the veil, shadows gathered and pressed forward, drawn by the Venatori's magic. "Now!" Harry shouted, and his friends burst into action. Ron and Ginny targeted the off-position Venatori with synchronized stunning spells. Hermione and Luna cast complex countercharms against the ritual energy. Neville and Draco moved to free Valeria. Harry faced the Grand Master directly, raising the Mortis Clavis. "This ends now." The chamber erupted in magical combat. The Venatori abandoned their ritual positions to defend against the unexpected assault, firing deadly curses that Harry's friends countered with shields and deflections honed through years of magical conflict. The Grand Master remained focused on Harry, unmoved by the chaos around them. "The key cannot help you, Ambassador. You lack the knowledge to wield it properly." "We'll see about that," Harry replied, channeling energy from his scar through the key. Golden light erupted from the artifact, meeting the Grand Master's wave of grey death energy in a spectacular collision of power. The opposing forces pushed against each other, creating a swirling maelstrom of magic between them. Around the chamber, the battle intensified. Rune ducked a killing curse and returned fire with precision born from aura training. Ginny moved with the agility of a professional Quidditch player, her hexes finding targets with unerring accuracy. Hermione's analytical mind identified and countered the ritual components while Luna's unconventional magic disrupted patterns the Venatori didn't expect to be recognized. Neville fought with the quiet determination that had beheaded Nagini, while Draco demonstrated that his knowledge of dark magic made him equally adept at countering it. But the Venatori were powerful, drawing on death energy to enhance their spells. Two of Harry's friends fell, first Neville, struck by a curse that froze him mid-motion, then Draco, caught by a spell that wrapped him in grey binding energy. "You cannot prevail, Ambassador," the Grand Master stated, still pushing against Harry's power. "The veil weakens with every moment. Soon we will have drawn enough power to complete our work." Harry could feel the truth in those words. The boundary between worlds was unraveling around the ancient archway, the veil fluttering more erratically. Behind it, the shadows pressed closer, drawn by the disruption. Valeria, now freed from her bonds by Hermione, staggered toward Harry. "The key," she gasped. "It must touch the archway directly, at the keystone." Harry understood immediately. Fighting against the Grandmaster's power, he began moving laterally, working his way toward the stone arch while maintaining the connection between the key and his opponent. "You seek to repair what must be broken," the Grandmaster realized, increasing his assault. "The boundary must fall completely before it can be properly remade." "You're wrong," Harry countered, continuing his sideways movement. "The boundary exists for a reason, but not as an absolute barrier. Death isn't the end of existence, it's a transition to another state of being." He was nearly at the archway now. The veil rippled violently, and Harry could see faces forming in its folds, the dead responding to the disturbance, some pushing forward against the weakening barrier, others trying to maintain the separation. The Grand Master abandoned subtlety, gesturing to his remaining Venatori. "Stop him. He must not reach the arch." The hooded figures redirected their attacks toward Harry, but his friends intercepted them. Ginny took a curse meant for Harry, crying out as she collapsed. Ron roared in fury and doubled his efforts, protecting his sister while continuing to fight. "Harry, now!" Hermione shouted, conjuring a shield between him and the remaining attackers. With a final surge of effort, Harry broke away from his magical deadlock with the Grandmaster and lunged toward the arch. The key in his outstretched hand glowed blindingly bright as he pressed it against the keystone at the arch's apex. The moment contact was made, a shock wave of golden energy erupted from the point of connection. The veil stabilized instantly, its erratic movements calming into the gentle flutter Harry remembered from years before. The shadows behind it receded to their proper distance. "No," the Grand Master howled, launching a final desperate attack. But Harry wasn't finished. Keeping the key pressed to the archway, he drew the boundary blade with his other hand and plunged it directly into the stone beside the key. "I am the Ambassador," he declared, feeling power surge through both artifacts into his body and out through his scar. "I stand between worlds as their bridge, not their barrier. By the authority of the mark, I command this boundary to heal." Golden light spread from his scar, connecting to the key and blade, then flowing outward along the archway until the entire structure glowed with blinding radiance. The Soilo rune appeared briefly in the air above, large enough to fill the chamber, before dissolving into particles of light that settled on the veil like golden dust. The power of the ritual repaired the boundary between worlds, not sealing it completely as the Venatori wished, nor opening it fully, but restoring it to its proper state of permeable separation. The magical shock wave knocked everyone in the chamber off their feet, extinguishing lights and sending artifacts crashing to the floor. When the glow faded, Harry found himself on his knees before the archway. The veil hung properly once more, gently moving as if stirred by an unfelt breeze. The Venatori lay scattered around the chamber, their connection to death energy severed by the ritual. Only the Grand Master remained standing, though visibly weakened. His ageless face now showed the centuries of his existence, deep lines appearing where smooth skin had been moments before. "What have you done?" he whispered hoarsely. "Restored balance," Harry replied, rising unsteadily to his feet, the key and blade still clutched in his hands. "The boundary is healed, not destroyed, not sealed, but made whole again." The Grand Master stared at the archway, then at Harry, recognition dawning in his ancient eyes. You are not merely an ambassador. You are the renewal." Before Harry could question this cryptic statement, the Grand Master made a slashing gesture with his hand. A portal of swirling grey energy formed behind him. "This is not ended, renewal," he warned, stepping backward into the portal. "What has been made whole can be broken again. We will meet once more, when the final threshold approaches." With those words, he vanished, the portal collapsing behind him. The remaining Venatori began to fade as well, their physical forms dissolving into shadow as their connection to the Death Realm was normalized by Harry's restoration. Harry rushed to check on his friends. Ginny was already stirring, the curse's effect diminishing with the Venatori's departure. Neville and Draco were similarly recovering. Ron, Hermione, and Luna stood guard over the unconscious or injured Venatori who hadn't managed to escape. "Is everyone all right?" Harry asked, kneeling beside Ginny. "Been better," she grimaced, sitting up slowly. "But I'll live." "Did it work?" Harry glanced at the archway, which now stood serene and balanced, the veil moving gently as it should. "Yes. This fracture is repaired." "There's still the one at Hogwarts," Hermione reminded him, helping Luna bind the remaining Venatori with magical restraints. "And the Grand Master escaped," Ron added grimly. "But we've stopped their immediate plan," Valeria said, approaching Harry with obvious respect in her eyes. "What you did was remarkable. Few ambassadors have ever demonstrated such control so quickly." Harry studied her carefully. "You knew more than you told us. About the Venatori's plan, about this renewal," the Grand Master mentioned. Valeria had the grace to look slightly abashed. "The department operates on a need-to-know basis. I couldn't be certain you were truly the one until I saw how you handled the key." "No more half-truths," Harry insisted, helping Ginny to her feet. "What did he mean by the renewal?" Valeria hesitated, then sighed. "According to our oldest records, every few centuries a special ambassador appears, one with the power not just to maintain the boundary but to fundamentally renew it. To cleanse accumulated damage and restore proper balance between realms." "And you think that's me?" Harry asked skeptically. "After what I just witnessed." Valeria gestured to the archway, now glowing with subtle golden energy. "I have no doubt. You didn't just repair the fracture, you strengthened the entire boundary structure. That's beyond what an ordinary ambassador could accomplish." Harry absorbed this information, too exhausted to feel properly shocked by yet another special designation. "What about the Hogwarts breach?" "It will need attention soon," Valeria confirmed. "But not necessarily tonight. What you've done here has temporarily stabilized all connected boundaries. We have perhaps a day before the Venatori regroup and the Hogwarts fracture begins deteriorating again." Ministry security alarms began blaring distantly. Someone had finally noticed the magical disturbance in the Department of Mysteries. "We should go," Ron advised. "Explaining this to Ministry security would take hours we don't have." Harry nodded, raising the mortis clavis once more. With practiced focus now, he created another golden archway, this one leading directly back to Grimmauld Place. "Come with us," he said to Valeria. "You can explain everything properly when we're safe." She nodded gratefully. "The department isn't secure anymore. The Venatori infiltrated too deeply. One by one, they helped each other through the portal, leaving behind the unconscious Venatori for Ministry security to find." Harry went last, taking a final look at the ancient stone archway with its gently fluttering veil. For a brief moment, he thought he saw familiar faces watching him from beyond, his parents, Sirius, Remus, Dumbledore, all nodding in approval before fading back into the realm they now properly inhabited. "Until we meet again," Harry murmured, then stepped through his created passage, closing it behind him. Back at Grimmauld Place, the group collapsed into exhausted heaps on chairs and sofas. Creature appeared with healing potions and refreshments, fussing over them in his peculiar mixture of servility and complaint. As they treated their injuries and recounted the battle, Harry sat slightly apart, examining the mortis clavis. The small silver key now felt like an extension of himself, a tool precisely matched to his unique abilities. Valeria approached cautiously, her own wounds bandaged. "I owe you an apology, and an explanation," she said quietly. "Yes, you do," Harry agreed, but without rancor. "Starting with why you really sought me out. It wasn't just about the awakening mark, was it?" "No," she admitted. "The department has monitored potential renewals for centuries. When your scar began showing increased activity, combined with your history with the Hallows and surviving the killing curse twice, you were the strongest candidate in generations. And you couldn't just tell me this because a true renewal must come into their power naturally," Valeria explained. "The abilities cannot be forced or artificially developed. I could guide but not instruct directly." She smiled wryly. "Also, bureaucracy. The department has protocols dating back centuries." Harry laughed despite himself. Magical government bureaucracy, more powerful than ancient death cults. Across the room, his friends were already planning their next steps, securing Hogwarts, researching the Grand Master's cryptic final words, establishing safehouses in case of renewed venatory activity. Even Draco had fully integrated into the group, arguing tactical approaches with Ron with more cooperation than animosity. "What happens now?" Harry asked Valeria, pocketing the key and blade. "After we repair the Hogwarts breach, I mean." "That depends on you," she replied. "Some ambassadors remain active guardians of the boundary throughout their lives. Others serve during specific crises then return to normal existence once balance is restored." Harry watched his friends, his family, really, working together as they had so many times before. Ginny caught his eye and smiled warmly, reminding him that beyond magical destinies and ancient responsibilities, he had a life he valued. "I think," he said slowly, "that I'll find a balance of my own. I can't ignore these abilities or responsibilities now that I understand them. But I'm not giving up everything else to become some mythical figure either." Valeria nodded approvingly. The best ambassadors always maintained connections to the living world. It gives them perspective that pure boundary guardians lack. Harry touched his scar thoughtfully. The mark that had defined so much of his life had transformed from a curse into something else entirely, not a blessing exactly, but a purpose. A responsibility that, for once, he was choosing to accept rather than having forced upon him. "We'll secure Hogwarts tomorrow," he decided. "Tonight, we rest and prepare. The Venatori won't give up easily." "No," Valeria agreed. "Especially now that they've identified you as the renewal. The Grand Master has likely existed for centuries by manipulating death energy. He won't relinquish that power willingly." Harry gazed around at his friends, battered but unbowed, ready to face whatever came next alongside him. Whatever challenges awaited, whatever his role as ambassador or renewal demanded, he wouldn't face it alone. The boundary between worlds had been damaged, but it was healing now. And in the process of repairing it, Harry had found a new understanding of his own place in the order of things, not just a survivor or chosen one, but a bridge between realms, helping maintain the proper balance between life and death. The Soilo rune that had marked him since infancy tingled gently, no longer painful or foreign but an integrated part of who he was becoming. Death's ambassador. The renewal. But most importantly, still Harry, just Harry, with friends who would follow him even between worlds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Hogwarts breach. The Venatori's next move. The Grand Master's ominous promise of future confrontation. But for tonight, they had won a crucial victory and discovered truths long hidden. Harry touched the key in his pocket, feeling its resonance with his scar. Whatever came next, he was ready. Chapter 3, The True Master, He's Getting Stronger, Ginny whispered, watching Harry from the doorway. Ron nodded, standing beside his sister. Never seen anything like it. In the center of Grimmauld Place's drawing room, Harry hovered 6 inches above the floor, eyes closed in concentration. The mortis clavis floated before him, spinning slowly, golden threads of energy connecting it to the Soilo rune on his forehead. Around him, the air shimmered with a boundary between worlds made briefly visible, neither fully open nor completely closed. 2 hours without a break, Hermione noted, checking her watch. His endurance is improving too. The morning after their battle at the Department of Mysteries, Harry had begun intensive training with the key, preparing for the Hogwarts breach repair. What started as brief exercises had evolved into marathon sessions as his connection to the boundary magic deepened. With a deep breath, Harry lowered himself to the ground and opened his eyes. The golden energy faded, and the key dropped into his waiting palm. Getting easier, he said, sounding surprised himself. It's like muscle memory now. You're integrating the power rather than just channeling it, Valeria explained, making notes in a journal. The mark is becoming fully awakened. 5 days had passed since their confrontation with the Venatori. The Ministry was in chaos following the attack, with emergency security measures implemented throughout the magical government. The Daily Prophet speculated wildly about everything from foreign infiltration to the return of Death Eaters. Meanwhile, Harry and his friends prepared quietly at Grimmauld Place, knowing the relative calm was temporary. Any word from your Ministry contacts? Harry asked Ron, accepting a glass of water from Creature. Nothing specific, Ron replied, but security around Hogwarts has doubled. McGonagall's allowing it because of the break-in, but she's asking questions about why Death Chamber artifacts were found in the castle. We need to move soon, Harry decided. The longer we wait, the more time the Venatori have to regroup. Draco entered carrying ancient scrolls borrowed from his family's collection. Found something, he announced without preamble. References to previous renewals and their confrontations with the Venatori. Everyone gathered around the table as Draco spread out the yellowed parchment. According to these records, the last confirmed renewal was in 1672, a witch named Cassandra Trelawney. Professor Trelawney's ancestor? Harry asked, surprised. The very same, Draco confirmed. Apparently, genuine seeing ability runs in that family alongside a talent for boundary magic. Explains a few things about our former professor. What happened to her? Ginny asked. She successfully repaired a massive boundary breach caused by alchemical experiments gone wrong, then disappeared, Draco summarized, scanning the text. Rumors suggested she crossed permanently into the Death Realm as a guardian. Cheerful, Ron muttered. But here's the interesting part, Draco continued, pointing to a specific passage. The Venatori of that era were led by the same Grandmaster, described as ageless and sustained by death energy. That's impossible, Hermione objected. No one lives for 3.5 centuries. Unless, Valeria interjected, they found a way to exist partially in the Death Realm, drawing power from it to extend their physical existence. Like a living Horcrux, Harry realized, but using the boundary itself instead of soul fragments. Exactly, Valeria nodded. We've theorized that the Venatori Grandmaster maintains his existence by siphoning small amounts of death energy continuously. It wouldn't grant true immortality, but could extend life far beyond normal limits. Which explains why he's so determined to control the boundary, Luna added, speaking for the first time that morning. She sat cross-legged on a nearby sofa, surrounded by her mother's research notes. If the boundary is properly maintained by an ambassador, his access would be limited. But if he could control or manipulate it himself? Harry began. Unlimited power, Neville finished grimly. Worse than Voldemort in some ways. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. Harry felt the key grow warm in his pocket, responding to his heightened emotions. We can't just react anymore, he decided. We need to take the initiative. Repair the Hogwarts breach, then find the Grandmaster before he causes more damage. The breach first, Hermione agreed. It's the immediate vulnerability. I've been working on getting us access, Neville said. McGonagall agreed to let me bring in specialist consultants to examine some unusual magical disturbances in the Great Hall. She doesn't know the details, but she trusts me. When? Harry asked. Tonight, Neville replied. After dinner, when most staff will be elsewhere. Summer maintenance work gives us perfect cover. Harry nodded. Tonight, then. We repair the breach and strengthen the boundary around Hogwarts. What about after? Ginny asked, the question everyone was thinking. How do we find the Grandmaster? We won't have to, Harry said with sudden certainty. Once we repair Hogwarts, he'll come to us. He can't afford to let the boundary be fully restored. Then we need to choose the battlefield, Ron said, tactical mind working. Draw him out somewhere we control. I know just the place, Harry replied, the plan forming clearly in his mind. Godric's Hollow. Dusk settled over Hogwarts as Harry, Ron, Hermione, Luna, and Neville approached from the direction of Hogsmeade. Ginny and Draco had remained at Grimmauld Place with Valeria, preparing defenses for the next phase of their plan. Main entrance is being watched, Neville murmured as they skirted the edge of the grounds. Ministry security, but we can't be sure who's been compromised. This way, Harry directed, feeling the key warm in his pocket as they neared the castle. His connection to boundary magic had sharpened his senses beyond normal perception. He could literally feel the weakened spot in the magical fabric around the Great Hall. They entered through the same staff passage they'd used days before, emerging into the quiet dungeons. Summer at Hogwarts felt strange, the usual bustling energy of students replaced by an almost reverent silence. Anyone else getting flashbacks? Ron whispered as they climbed the stairs toward the entrance hall. Feels like we're students again, sneaking around after curfew. Except the stakes are slightly higher than house points, Hermione replied dryly. Harry led them confidently through the familiar corridors. As they approached the Great Hall, he slowed, removing the boundary blade from its sheath. The breach is directly where Voldemort fell, he explained, feeling it pulse against his magical senses. I can see it now. The massive doors to the Great Hall stood open, revealing the cavernous space beyond. Without the long house tables, the hall appeared even larger, moonlight streaming through the enchanted ceiling to illuminate the stone floor. It's beautiful, Luna observed as they entered cautiously. The fracture, I mean. Terrible, but beautiful. Now that Harry had fully awakened his abilities, he saw what Luna meant. In the center of the hall, reality itself seemed to shimmer, a hairline crack in the world, leaking faint silver light. To normal vision it was barely perceptible, but through his death sight, it blazed like a beacon. The final confrontation caused this, Hermione said softly. When Voldemort's fractured soul finally passed on, it tore the boundary. Harry approached the fracture slowly, feeling his scar respond to its proximity. Unlike the department breach, this one was smaller but deeper, a precise puncture rather than a wide tear. Stand back, he instructed his friends. I need space to work. Drawing both the key and blade, Harry positioned himself directly over the spot where Voldemort had fallen 5 years earlier. The memory of that moment was still vivid, the flash of rebounding green light, the Dark Lord collapsing, lifeless at last. Watch the entrances, Harry told the others. I doubt we're alone for long. Ron, Hermione, Neville, and Luna formed a protective perimeter while Harry knelt beside the fracture. Touching the blade to his palm, he drew a single drop of blood and let it fall onto the crack. The response was immediate. The fracture widened slightly, reacting to the presence of the marked one's blood. Harry could see through it now, glimpses of the death realm beyond, shadows moving in perpetual twilight. Ambassador, came a familiar voice. Kairos appeared within the fracture, visible only to Harry. You have returned to complete your work. The damage here runs deeper than I expected, Harry replied, aware his friends could hear only his side of the conversation. This wound was inflicted by one who violated death's most fundamental laws, Kairos explained. 7 times he fractured his soul. 7 times he defied the natural transition. The boundary remembers. Harry withdrew the mortis clavis, which glowed with anticipation. Show me how to heal it properly. Place the key within the fracture, Kairos instructed. Then reach through with your marked essence. What was broken by death magic must be mended by the same. Harry positioned the key at the edge of the fracture, then closed his eyes to focus. Drawing energy from his scar, he extended his consciousness through the key into the breach itself. The sensation was disorienting, like plunging headfirst into icy water. He felt himself partially enter the death realm while remaining anchored to the physical world, existing simultaneously in both places. From this perspective, the damage was even more apparent, a jagged wound in reality itself, leaking energy in both directions. Harry could sense how it weakened the castle's ancient protections, creating vulnerability at Hogwarts' heart. Following instincts that felt increasingly natural, Harry began weaving his own energy into the torn edges of the boundary. The mortis clavis served as both needle and thread, pulling the fracture closed stitch by magical stitch. In the physical world, golden light emanated from Harry's body, spreading across the great hall floor in intricate patterns that mirrored the Soilo rune. The castle itself seemed to respond, the ancient stones humming with resonant magic. It's working, Luna whispered, watching the golden light seal the previously invisible fracture. The boundary is healing. Harry pushed deeper, channeling more power into the repair. Unlike at the department, where he'd worked hastily under attack, here he could be thorough, reinforcing the mended boundary with additional protective enchantments. Stronger than before, he murmured, voice echoing strangely as if speaking from both realms simultaneously. Not just repaired but renewed. The castle shuddered slightly, magical energy rippling through its foundations as the breach closed completely. The enchanted ceiling briefly displayed not the night sky but a glimpse of something else entirely, the realm beyond death, visible for a heartbeat before returning to familiar stars. It is done, Kairos confirmed from the threshold. The second wound is healed. The boundary stabilizes. But it's not over, Harry replied, already sensing a shift in the magical atmosphere. The Grandmaster will respond to this. Yes, Kairos agreed. He has felt the renewal begin. He will seek to stop what cannot be stopped. The Guardian's form began to fade. We shall meet once more, Ambassador. At the place where your journey began. Before Harry could question this cryptic statement, Kairos vanished completely. The golden light receded, drawing back into Harry's body as he slowly returned to full physical presence. He rose shakily to his feet, feeling drained but triumphant. Where the fracture had been, the stone floor now bore a faint, permanent marking, the Soilo rune etched as if by centuries of magical energy. Harry. Hermione approached cautiously. Are you all right? Yeah, he nodded, pocketing the key. It's done. Properly this time. Ron was about to speak when the doors to the great hall slammed shut with a thunderous boom. Seconds later, all the torches and candles extinguished simultaneously, plunging the hall into darkness relieved only by moonlight from the enchanted ceiling. We've got company, Neville warned, wand raised. Harry didn't need to be told. He could feel them, Venatori, not the partially spectral kind but fully human agents, surrounding the great hall. His newly enhanced senses detected their distinctive energy signatures moving through corridors and secret passages. Defensive positions, he ordered calmly. Back to back. They're coming from multiple entrances. The 5 friends formed a tight circle in the center of the hall, wands ready. Harry drew the boundary blade again, holding it alongside his wand. How many? Ron asked, eyes scanning the shadows. At least 8, Harry replied. Not the Grandmaster though. He's not here. Luna raised her wand toward the ceiling. We should even the odds. Lumos Maxima Caelum. A brilliant ball of light shot upward, embedding itself in the enchanted ceiling and illuminating the entire hall. In the sudden brightness, they could see hooded figures emerging from various doorways and alcoves, at least 10 Venatori agents advancing with wands drawn. Ministry security doesn't stand a chance against these infiltrators, Neville muttered. Then it's good they have us instead, Hermione replied, casting a complex shielding charm around their group. The lead Venatori stepped forward, lowering his hood to reveal a hard-faced wizard with cold eyes. Potter. The Grand Master sends his regards. And his promise that your interference ends tonight. Didn't work out so well for you last time, Harry pointed out. And now the boundary is fully repaired. You've lost. Have we? The wizard smiled unpleasantly. The Grand Master anticipated your actions here. While you've been occupied, he's prepared a more permanent solution to our mutual problem. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with boundary magic. What has he done? Even now, he gathers his power at the place where Death's mark first touched you, the wizard replied. By dawn, the ritual will be complete, and all passages between worlds permanently sealed, with you trapped on whichever side you happen to occupy. Godric's Hollow, Harry realized aloud. He's at Godric's Hollow. Precisely. Where your parents died. Where the Dark Lord first marked you. A place of power saturated with death magic. The wizard raised his wand. We're simply here to ensure you remain delayed. Harry made an instant decision. Change of plans, he told his friends. We need to reach Godric's Hollow immediately. We're a bit surrounded at the moment, Ron pointed out as the Venatori began closing in. Not for long, Harry replied, channeling energy into the boundary blade. With a single fluid motion, he plunged the blade into the stone floor at their feet. Golden light erupted from the point of contact, creating a perfect circle around their group. Hold on to me. Harry commanded, grasping the mortis clavis with his free hand. As his friends grabbed his shoulders and arms, Harry focused on creating not just a window or door between locations, but a complete translocation, pulling them partially into the boundary space and back out at their destination. Stop them, the lead Venatori shouted, but too late. The golden circle flared blindingly bright. Harry felt the familiar sensation of passing through the boundary, but intensified, like apparition but without the compression, moving through the space between spaces. For a breathless moment, they existed everywhere and nowhere. Then reality solidified around them, and they stood in the center of Godric's Hollow Cemetery, the golden circle fading beneath their feet. Bloody hell, Ron gasped, staggering slightly. That was different. Direct boundary translation, Harry explained, already scanning their surroundings. Faster than apparition, bypasses all standard wards. And extremely advanced magic, Hermione added, looking at Harry with newfound respect. That wasn't just using the key's power, you actually understood how to navigate the boundary space. Harry didn't have time to reflect on his growing abilities. The cemetery appeared peaceful in the moonlight, but his senses detected powerful magic building nearby. There, he pointed toward his parents' former home in the distance. The Grand Master is at the house. I can feel the ritual energy. The cottage where Lily and James Potter had died remained a memorial, partially ruined, preserved under magical protection. Now it glowed with ominous gray light, visible even from the cemetery. What exactly is his plan? Neville asked as they moved cautiously through the graves. To use my parents' sacrifice point to seal the boundary permanently, Harry replied grimly. It's where the mark first appeared, where death magic first connected to me. If he corrupts that connection, he can use it to lock the boundary from both sides. But why would he want that? Ron wondered. Doesn't he draw power from the boundary himself? He's likely prepared a way to maintain his personal access while closing it for everyone else, Luna reasoned. A permanent, exclusive connection. Absolute power over death, Hermione concluded. No ghosts, no afterlife connections, no returning from near-death experiences, except for him. They reached the cemetery gate, where Harry paused suddenly. His scar tingled with warning. "We're being watched," he murmured. From the shadows between houses, figures emerged, villagers of Godric's Hollow, but moving with unnatural synchronization, their eyes glazed and empty. Imperious curse, Hermione identified immediately. The whole village. "They're just pawns," Harry said. "We need to reach the house without hurting them." More controlled villagers appeared from all directions, blocking their path. Among them moved actual Venatori agents, distinguished by their hooded robes and the cold energy Harry now recognized instantly. "We need backup," Ron decided, sending his Patronus streaking away toward Grimmauld Place with a message for Ginny and the others. Harry assessed their options quickly. Dozens of improvised villagers plus at least 5 Venatori agents stood between them and the cottage. Direct confrontation risked harming innocent people, but delay meant giving the Grandmaster time to complete his ritual. "I'll clear a path," he told the others. "When I do, run for the cottage. Don't stop for anything." Channeling energy from his scar, Harry raised both hands toward the approaching villagers. Instead of attacking, he focused on the subtle magical threads connecting them to their Venatori controllers. "Finite Nexus," he commanded, releasing a pulse of golden energy that spread outward like a wave. The improvised villagers stumbled as the controlling magic shattered. Many collapsed, suddenly freed from the powerful compulsion. The Venatori agents shouted in alarm as their puppets fell away. "Now!" Harry shouted, sprinting forward with his friends close behind. The Venatori recovered quickly, sending deadly curses toward the running group. Hermione conjured a mobile shield that deflected the worst attacks, while Ron and Neville returned fire over their shoulders. Luna moved with surprising agility, her unconventional spell choices creating confusion among their pursuers. A swarm of glowing butterflies erupted from her wand, surrounding one Venatori agent who screamed as they apparently showed him visions only he could see. They reached the edge of the cottage's garden, where the true battle began. Here, the Venatori had prepared proper defenses, wards layered with death magic that responded viciously to intrusion. "Cover me," Harry told the others, drawing the Mortis Clavis. While his friends engaged the approaching Venatori in magical combat, Harry examined the ward structure with his death sight. The protective barriers glowed with sickly gray energy, anchored to the cottage's foundation stones. "Same technique as before," he muttered to himself, pressing the key against the ward's central node. The boundary magic responded to his touch, recognizing the authority of the mark and key. The outer wards dissolved reluctantly, creating an opening. "Through here," Harry called to his friends. "Quickly!" They pushed forward into the garden, fighting their way toward the cottage. Inside, visible through broken windows, pulsing gray light illuminated a tall figure standing in what had once been the living room, the Grandmaster, arms raised as he conducted his ritual. A thunderous crack announced the arrival of reinforcements. Ginny, Draco, and Valeria apparat at the edge of the property, immediately joining the battle against the pursuing Venatori. "About time!" Ron shouted to his sister. "You're welcome." Ginny called back, sending a perfectly aimed reductor curse at a Venatori agent trying to flank them. Draco moved with cold efficiency, his knowledge of dark magic making him particularly effective against the death-based spells. "Potter," he shouted. "Their ritual is connecting to anchor points around the property. Those stone markers." Harry spotted what Draco had identified, 7 small obelisks arranged in a pattern around the cottage, each pulsing with the same gray energy. Together they formed a larger version of the Soilo rune, inverted and corrupted. "We need to disrupt the anchor points," Harry called back. "Split up and destroy them." The group divided quickly. Ginny and Neville took the 2 nearest markers, Ron and Hermione ran toward those on the eastern side, Luna and Draco headed for the western markers, while Harry and Valeria approached the cottage directly. "The Grandmaster must be stopped before the anchor points fall," Valeria warned as they ran. Otherwise, the ritual energy will release catastrophically. Harry nodded grimly, feeling his scar burn with proximity to such powerful death magic. The cottage door hung broken on its hinges, the same door his father had once tried to hold against Voldemort. Harry pushed through it, entering the place where his life had changed irrevocably as an infant. Inside, the Grand Master stood in a circle of floating runes, grey energy swirling around him like a tornado in slow motion. The ritual had progressed significantly. Harry could feel the boundary itself straining against unnatural forces. "Ambassador," the Grand Master acknowledged without turning. "Or should I say, renewal. You're too late. The sealing has begun." "It's not too late," Harry countered, the mortis clavis glowing brightly in his hand. "I've stopped you once already." Now the Grand Master turned, his ancient face illuminated by the ritual energies. "You repaired what was broken. Admirable but ultimately futile. Some boundaries are meant to be reshaped by those with vision and power." "This isn't vision," Harry replied. "It's corruption. Death isn't meant to be controlled by any single entity, not even its ambassador." Outside, explosions signaled his friend's attacks on the anchor stones. The ritual circle flickered momentarily as one connection failed. The Grand Master's expression darkened. "Your friends are persistent. But even if they destroy all anchors, enough energy has gathered to complete a partial sealing, beginning with you." He made a slashing gesture toward Harry. Grey energy lashed out like a whip, aiming for his scar. Harry raised the key instinctively, creating a golden shield that deflected the attack. "You've grown stronger," the Grand Master observed. "But you still don't understand the true nature of what you guard. The boundary isn't sacred, it's merely a construction, designed to maintain separation where union should exist." Another explosion shook the cottage as a second anchor stone fell. The ritual wavered again, energy fluctuating wildly. "If union were meant to exist," Harry argued, advancing steadily, "then why does every natural law maintain the separation? Why do only the darkest magics break it?" The Grand Master laughed, a hollow sound devoid of warmth. "Natural law. You think what you protect is natural? The boundary was created, Ambassador. Created by those who feared what lay beyond death. Created to prevent what they could not control." A third explosion, stronger than the others. Half the ritual anchors were now destroyed. Valeria stepped forward. "Don't listen to him, Harry. The Venatori have twisted the truth for centuries to justify their interference." "Have we?" the Grand Master challenged. "Tell him, unspeakable. Tell him what your precious department has known since its founding. Tell him about the Pact of Division." Harry saw uncertainty flicker across Valeria's face. "What's he talking about?" he demanded. Before she could answer, the Grand Master sent another attack, not toward Harry this time but at Valeria. A jet of grey energy struck her squarely in the chest, lifting her from her feet and pinning her against the wall. "The Department of Mysteries exists not to study death," the Grand Master stated coldly, "but to maintain an artificial division created by wizards who feared what comes after. The veil in their chamber is not a natural phenomenon but a constructed barrier, the first and strongest point of separation." "That's not exactly," Valeria gasped against the magical pressure crushing her. "Enough half-truths," the Grand Master thundered. "For millennia, the cycle of life and death flowed as one continuous existence. Consciousness moved between states of being without artificial barriers. Then came those who feared losing their power in transition, who created the boundary to maintain their authority beyond their natural span." A fourth anchor stone exploded outside. The ritual circle constricted, forcing the Grand Master to intensify his focus. He released Valeria, who slumped to the floor, coughing. "He's not entirely wrong," she admitted to Harry. "The earliest records suggest the boundary was strengthened artificially in ancient times. But not for the reasons he claims, it was to prevent chaos, to maintain proper order between states of existence." "Order imposed by whom?" the Grand Master challenged. "By those who appointed themselves gods. Who decided they alone could determine the rules of transition? Harry's mind raced, processing these revelations while watching the ritual continue to destabilize. Outside, his friends battled the remaining Venatori, destroying anchor stones one by one. Even if what you say is true, Harry said carefully, your solution is worse than the problem. Sealing the boundary completely would cause untold suffering. Not sealing, the Grandmaster corrected. Reshaping. Under my guidance, the natural flow would be restored, with necessary controls to prevent the chaos of complete merger. With you as the controller, Harry observed. The sole arbiter of life and death. That's not restoration, it's tyranny. The fifth anchor stone fell. The ritual circle contracted violently, energy lashing out in random arcs that scarred the walls and floor. The Grandmaster grimaced with the effort of maintaining control. You cannot stop what has begun, he insisted. Even now, the ritual reaches toward completion. The boundary thins at this focal point, this place of powerful death magic where you were first marked. Harry felt it too, the boundary between worlds growing increasingly permeable around them. Through the walls of the cottage, he could see not just the physical structure but layered realities beyond it, glimpses of the same space as it existed in the death realm. The moment had come for a decision. Not just about stopping the Grandmaster's ritual, but about the nature of the boundary itself and his role as its ambassador. Harry raised the mortis clavis. You're right about one thing, he told the Grandmaster. The boundary is thinning here. But not for your ritual. Focusing his will through the key, Harry created something new, not a gateway between locations, but a window between states of being. The air before him shimmered and parted, revealing the death realm as it overlapped with their current location. And there they stood, James and Lily Potter, visible now not as memories or echoes but as they existed in Death's realm. Behind them gathered others Harry recognized, Sirius, Remus and Tonks, Fred Weasley, Dumbledore, and dozens more, those who had died at Voldemort's hand or fighting against him. What is this? The Grandmaster demanded, ritual momentarily forgotten. What have you done? Shown the truth, Harry replied calmly. Death isn't emptiness or oblivion. It isn't something to be feared or controlled. It's just, the next state of being. Harry, Lily's voice came through the window between worlds, ethereal but distinct. We've waited for this moment. Not for me to join you, Harry understood immediately. But for me to understand. James nodded. The boundary exists not to separate permanently, but to maintain the distinct experiences necessary for growth. Both realms need their integrity. Neither fully merged nor completely divided, Sirius added, but connected through proper transitions and guided interactions. The Grandmaster's face contorted with rage. Sentimentality and deception. They show you comfortable illusions to maintain control. No, Harry countered with certainty. They show me what you've forgotten after centuries of existing in between, the natural order that you claim to restore but actually pervert. The sixth anchor stone exploded outside. The ritual circle collapsed further, energy now barely contained. Through the broken windows, Harry could see his friends converging on the final anchor, fighting through the remaining Venatori defenses. It ends now, Harry told the Grandmaster. Not with sealing or destruction, but with restoration of the proper balance. He plunged the mortis clavis into the center of the failing ritual circle. Golden light exploded outward, meeting the gray energy in a spectacular collision of power. The competing magics swirled and fought, threatening to tear the cottage apart. What are you doing? The Grandmaster shouted over the magical maelstrom. Exactly what the renewal is meant to do, Harry replied, channeling more power through his scar into the key. Cleansing accumulated damage and restoring proper balance. The final anchor stone fell to his friend's combined attack. Without external supports, the ritual energy rebounded inward, drawn to the mortis clavis like lightning to a rod. No, the Grandmaster lunged toward Harry, hands outstretched to tear the key away. You'll destroy everything I've built. But he couldn't reach Harry through the intensifying magical storm. The energies had become self-sustaining, feeding on the Grandmaster's own centuries of accumulated death power. Harry maintained his position at the eye of the magical hurricane, the key anchored before him, his scar blazing with golden light that spread to engulf his entire body. Through the window between worlds, his parents and the others added their own energy, not interfering directly but reinforcing the natural balance from their side. The boundary renews, Harry stated with calm certainty. Not by my will alone, but by the combined intention of both realms. The Grandmaster howled in fury and desperation as his physical form began to unravel. Centuries of artificially extended existence through death energy manipulation were catching up at once, his unnatural state rejected by the renewing boundary. This is not ended, he cried as his body disintegrated into swirling gray particles. The cycle will begin again. Another will rise. Perhaps, Harry acknowledged. And when that happens, there will be another renewal to meet them. With a final cry of rage, the Grandmaster dissolved completely, his essence scattered by the cleansing energies of the ritual's reversal. The grey power he had gathered didn't dissipate but transformed, changing from corrupt death energy to purified boundary magic that spread outward from Godric's hollow in a wave of golden light. Harry felt the wave extend far beyond what his eyes could see, touching every fracture, every weakened point in the boundary between worlds, restoring proper balance and permeability. Not sealed, not destroyed, but healed. The magical storm subsided gradually. When the air cleared, Harry found himself still standing in the ruined cottage, the mortis clavis floating before him, transformed. What had been a simple key was now an intricately designed amulet, the Soilo rune at its center surrounded by smaller symbols representing balance and transition. The window between worlds remained open, his parents and the others still visible beyond. You've completed the renewal, Lily said, pride evident in her voice. The first in generations to truly understand the balance. The boundary is restored to its proper state, James added. Neither a wall nor an open door, but a permeable membrane that maintains the integrity of both realms while allowing necessary connection. Will it last? Harry asked, aware of his friends now entering the cottage behind him, staring in wonder at the window between worlds. Nothing lasts forever, Dumbledore replied, his blue eyes twinkling as they had in life. But what you've accomplished will endure beyond your lifetime. The balance has been reset. And the Grandmaster? Harry questioned. Is he truly gone? His physical form has returned to its natural state, Sirius explained. His essence will continue its journey as all must eventually do. And the Venatori? Without their leader's power and vision, they will scatter, Remus said. Some may continue their misguided crusade, but their greatest strength is broken. Harry felt exhaustion settling into his bones as the adrenaline and magical energy began to fade. What happens now? To me? To this? He gestured at the amulet that had been the key. You remain the ambassador, Lily answered gently. The mark is still yours, as is the responsibility it represents. But having completed the renewal, you need not actively maintain what has been restored. You can return to your life, James added, knowing the boundary will remain stable for generations. The amulet will help you control when and how you access your abilities. Harry felt a hand on his shoulder, Ginny, standing beside him, staring in wonder at his parents. You can see them? He asked her. We all can, she confirmed. Just this once, I think. Indeed, all his friends could now see through the window between worlds. Ron stared at Fred with tears streaming down his face. Luna waved serenely at her mother, who stood somewhere behind Dumbledore. Neville straightened his shoulders as he spotted his parents, not the broken shells in St. Mungo's, but as they existed in Death's realm, whole and proud. This connection cannot last long, Dumbledore cautioned. Even with the boundary renewed, extended contact between realms requires significant energy. I understand, Harry said, feeling the window already beginning to fade. We are always closer than you think, Lily told him. The boundary separates experience, not love. And we're immensely proud of the man you've become, James added. Live well, Harry. Live fully. Death will wait patiently for its proper time. The figures beyond the window raised their hands in farewell as the connection faded. The last to disappear was Sirius, who gave Harry a wink and his familiar barking laugh before the window closed completely. Silence fell in the ruined cottage. Harry stood motionless, the transformed amulet floating down into his outstretched palm. His friends gathered around him, offering silent support in the aftermath of something profound and otherworldly. It's really over? Ron finally asked. This part is, Harry confirmed, closing his fingers around the amulet. The boundary is renewed. The Grandmaster is gone. The immediate threat is ended. And the Department of Mysteries? Hermione asked, looking at Valeria who stood quietly near the wall. Has much to reconsider about its approach to boundary magic, Valeria admitted. Perhaps it's time certain truths were acknowledged rather than hidden. Dawn light began filtering through the broken windows, illuminating the cottage interior. Where the ritual circle had been, a perfect impression of the Soilo rune now marked the floor, not burned or carved but somehow integrated into the very substance of the stone, as if it had always been there. We should go, Neville suggested practically. The Ministry will be sending investigators soon, and explaining this would be complicated. Harry nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of exhaustion. The others began moving toward the door, but he paused for one last look around the cottage where his life had begun and, in some ways, begun again tonight. Coming? Ginny asked softly, waiting for him. Yeah, Harry replied, pocketing the amulet. Let's go home. 3 months later, Harry stood on a hill overlooking Hogwarts as autumn painted the surrounding forest in brilliant reds and golds. Students moved across the grounds below, tiny figures enjoying the weekend sunshine before winter's approach. Admiring the view? Ginny asked, joining him with 2 butterbeers in hand. Admiring the normality, Harry corrected, accepting a bottle. It's nice seeing the world just continue. Much had changed since the confrontation at Godric's Hollow. The remaining Venatori had indeed scattered, though Auror Intelligence occasionally reported isolated incidents involving former members. The Ministry had launched investigations into security breaches but found little evidence of what had truly occurred, a situation that suited Harry perfectly. Valeria had returned to the Department of Mysteries with a new mandate to reassess centuries of policy regarding boundary magic. Harry maintained cautious contact with her, neither fully trusting nor completely dismissing the department's role. His friends had returned to their regular lives while remaining vigilant, Ron to the Aurors, Hermione to her work in magical law reform, Neville to teaching, Luna to her expeditions. Even Draco had settled back into his research, though with a new focus on boundary magic and its ethical applications. Any signs today? Ginny asked casually, referring to the death shadows Harry occasionally still perceived. Nothing unusual, he replied. Just the normal background awareness. The amulet keeps it manageable. The transformed mortis clavis now hung around his neck beneath his clothes, its presence a constant but comfortable reminder of his unique position. As his parents had predicted, the boundary remained stable, requiring minimal intervention from its ambassador. McGonagall wanted me to remind you about the Defense Against the Dark Arts guest lecture next month, Ginny mentioned. The students are extremely excited to have the boy who lived twice visiting. Harry groaned at the nickname that had emerged in Daily Prophet articles after vague reports of his involvement in the Ministry incident. I'll be there, he promised. Though I'll be teaching standard defensive magic, not the other stuff. Ginny bumped her shoulder against his. Probably wise. How to see when people will die isn't exactly standard curriculum. They watched a group of first-years attempting to fly on school brooms, their erratic movements suggesting varying levels of aptitude. I've been thinking, Harry said after a comfortable silence. About what comes next. For the Ambassador of Death? Ginny asked with a teasing smile. For Harry Potter, he corrected. The ambassador part exists, but it doesn't have to define everything. And what does Harry Potter want? Harry turned to face her fully. A life. A real one. Not defined by prophecies or ancient magic or dark lords. Not running from one crisis to another. Sounds suspiciously normal, Ginny observed. Think you can handle it? With help, Harry replied, taking her hand. I'm thinking of leaving the Aurors. Really? Ginny looked surprised. To do what? Something that builds rather than just fights. Teaching maybe, or working with magical creatures like Hagrid. Something that creates rather than just prevents destruction. Ginny considered this. You'd be good at teaching. The DA proved that years ago. I'd have more time too, Harry added meaningfully. For other priorities. Like Quidditch matches? Ginny suggested innocently. I know you miss at least half of mine due to Auror emergencies. Like Quidditch matches, Harry agreed. And holidays without interruption. And maybe, building something permanent. Together. Ginny's expression softened as she understood his meaning. Are you proposing to me on a hilltop, Potter? Not exactly proposing, Harry clarified hastily. More, checking if that path interests you before I actually plan something appropriately romantic. Ginny laughed, the sound carrying across the hillside. Very practical. The answer is yes, by the way, to the checking and to the eventual proper proposal. Though I expect the latter to involve considerably more effort. Harry grinned, pulling her close. Duly noted. They stood together watching the castle and grounds, Harry's scar tingling gently with the background magic of Hogwarts. The boundary between worlds remained perfectly balanced around them, neither too rigid nor too permeable, maintaining the proper distinction between life and death while allowing the connections that gave both meaning. Harry touched the amulet through his shirt, feeling its reassuring presence. The mark that had once seemed a curse had revealed itself as something else entirely, not a burden imposed but a responsibility accepted, a role he could integrate into a life defined by his own choices rather than others' prophecies. Death's ambassador. The renewal. But most importantly, just Harry, with friends who stood beside him through every challenge, family waiting patiently beyond the veil, and a future bright with possibilities he was finally free to pursue. As the autumn sun began its descent toward the forbidden forest, Harry and Ginny turned away from the vista and began walking back toward Hogsmeade. Behind them, barely visible to anyone without death sight, Kairos watched from the boundary's edge, nodding in satisfaction before fading back into the space between worlds, where the Guardian would wait until next needed by the ambassador who had truly mastered death not through conquest or fear, but through understanding and acceptance. The Soilo rune on Harry's forehead, hidden now beneath his unruly hair, gave one final warm pulse before settling into dormancy, not gone but at rest, its work complete for this generation. The true master of death walked on toward life, exactly as it should be. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.